by the time I was 12, I had this $40 a week business through 7th grade. And that's how I was able to pay for, like, help my mom pay for my school clothes, hanging out with my friends. The most important thing I did was I paid for my field trip when I was 13 and 8th grade to Washington, D.C. And I was the only kid, I remember just being the only kid on this 11-hour bus ride from Greenville, South Carolina to D.C. that, like, paid for my own way to go there. It was just like this big moment. And so when I was after working in government for a while in D.C. after college, I remember that moment. I remember how much of a sense of accomplishment it felt. So, like, not about the money, but really about, like, I created my own access, and then I learned later on that the definition of entrepreneurship is the pursuit of resources beyond what you currently control. So I realized, like, that I didn't even know what I was doing when I was 11 and 12 was entrepreneurship. But fast forward 10, 15 years, and I did. So when I moved back to Austin in 2009, I decided I'm going to start a new business every year for 10 years until one clicks. So my first business was, I was really into sneakers, and so I opened up a sneaker pop-up boutique in downtown Austin, and I would pop up at different rap concerts, music festivals around town, and that was fun, and it got me a lot of exposure in Austin, and it really helped me take my PR marketing skills and apply it to something tangible. But I really was not made for retail. That's a specific skill set that I didn't have. And so that business didn't work after about 16 months, but I took all the lessons from that and applied it to the next thing, which was I had met with one of the founders of South by Southwest Festival and said, hey, and with the sneaker boutique, I raised $90,000 from friends and family members. So I lost their $90,000. First business experience as an adult. Second business was, actually I had a social media consulting firm in which I was working for a firm that one of my college professors started, and after 8 months, a lot of our clients were trying to coach me and hire me, and we were trying to get FedEx as a client, and the head of comms for FedEx basically pulled me aside and was like, I don't want to hire this agency you work for, I want to hire you. And so she kind of coached me, and I didn't even know how to do this, but she kind of coached me on, in essence, I went and created an LLC, and within a week, I had like a contract with FedEx, and then I ended up landing like a 6-figure contract advising FedEx on social media strategy for 18 months, and this is when I was 25, 26 years old. And so that was my next business. So that was more of like what people would call a lifestyle business, where you can eat what you kill. If you go and get a $10,000 contract, you make $10,000, that kind of thing. And my third business was taking the sneaker boutique model and applying it to South by Southwest Festival. So I met one of the founders of South by Southwest and said, hey, you do music, you do tech, you do film, why not style or fashion? And he was like, well, what does that look like? So we spent almost a year planning that. And then we created what was a joint venture, where in essence, I built the team to focus on it 100%, and then South by Southwest funded it. So that's kind of like a traditional JV. They put the money in, I put the sweat equity in. It was 50-50. We did that for 2.5 years. And then as a result of doing that, I was getting recruited by a few different places in Austin, and one was this fast-growing tech company at the time called Bizarre Voice. And the CEO, the founder, and the CEO of that company basically said, we know you're an entrepreneur, but even if you come here for a year or two and be our director of operations, like, we think you can help us with some things we want to do before we go public. So that's what I did. I quit the businesses, I took the job. And by taking that job, I got in essence, like my pseudo MBA in the tech industry, working for a tech company on the verge of going public the next year. And then my last 6 months there, I was leading their travel strategy, which is what really got me enamored with online travel. So the first piece of, I don't have like a pitched slide presentation or anything to show you, but the first thing I would say is fundraising is about signal strength. Signal strength is a big part of fundraising. And so what I mean by that is if you don't have any track record of entrepreneurial success, then no, you can't go to a VC and try to raise $10 million right now, right? They're going to wait for you to have a certain level of signal strength, either past success, connections, whatever, to do that. But you may have signal strength to raise $10,000. So what I've learned is basically there are certain levels that you want to hit in order to make certain asks. So the first level is the level that I took. When I took that job, it was because there was a level I wanted to reach. So the first piece of advice I often tell people is take a job in the industry of which you're trying to attack. So it may seem like a step back, but once you perform in that job, you're really taking 2 steps forward. So that's exactly what I did. I worked for a tech company that was a fast-growing company in Austin for a year and a half, and it really established me as someone that wasn't just a sneaker boutique guy, but someone that was in tech. So now today, the CEO of that company, the chief operating officer of that company, the head of sales of that company are all investors of mine because they were able to work with me and see what I was doing. So that's the first thing I would say. The next thing I would say is do the homework. And specifically, I tell people all the time, there are about 40 to 50 questions you need to get an answer about your business before you talk to anyone else. And if you can't challenge yourself to come up with 40 or 50 questions, you haven't thought about the problem enough. Google actually has this model down pat where they have like these sprint teams that spend whatever 3 days or something just hammering out the answers to 40 questions before they justify an investment. And I really recommend you do that. So for my co-founder and I, he brought this idea to me right when I left the company I was at. I had been leading their travel strategy. I knew I wanted to do something in travel. I wasn't sure what. I didn't have the idea. He came to me with his idea. His idea was kind of like what Airbnb is doing with these experiences now, where you're a traveler, you meet up with a local, you kind of pay them. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do that because I personally wouldn't want to. I don't want to pay to be friends, but I like with some of what you're saying. And the words that he said were experience local, which is still part of our tag today. And so he and I spent 3 months meeting once a week. And every week, I would give him like 5 or 8 questions to answer. It could be questions about the product, questions about the go-to-market strategy, questions about who's going to use it, like all these questions. And so we hammered out 40 to 50 questions, and like not just like one-sentence answers. I'm talking about doing online research, getting the answers. Like, how big is this market? Is it growing? Why is it growing? All this stuff. So once we had those answers, we locked ourselves in a room, kind of like a conference room, something like this. And it was myself, my co-founder, and I actually flew in my friend from San Francisco, who's like a finance tech guy, so he's more of like a CFO guy for a startup. And I brought him in not to be a co-founder necessarily, but really to be like a judge, so that as my co-founder and I, Chase, as we walked through the answers and tried to come up with the business plan, this third party who was kind of more objective would just kind of weigh in. So Chase and I agreed on 85% of the business model, but that 15%, we needed like a third party to come in and help us like point in the right direction. So in essence, I just said, hey, can you come to Austin for 2 days and just sit in the room with us? We literally whiteboarded the entire business on all the walls. And by the end of that weekend, what we had was a 10-slide deck. And so this is the business. This is what we had initially. So we had this company called Travel Us, and we later changed the name because the guy who had the domain for Travel Us was trying to get $150,000. So we weren't going to do that, which thankfully we did because it's not a good name. So this was the business, and we were raising money. So we took this deck, and I made a list of 12 of my former bosses or mentors, people who I'd known since high school, college, previous jobs. And I took this to them. I emailed it to them, I called them, I met with them, and I sat down with them for 30 minutes or whatever. And out of that 12 people, 8 of them invested. So within 2 weeks of this thing being created, I'd raised the first $125,000. And that was a result of this, yes, but more so a result of all the stuff that I had done before that painted a picture of this has fewer chances of failure than something else you're seeing. Because you're always competing with other investment choices, whether it's like someone buying a second home or an investment property or other startups. And so you have when you first start, you're talking about de-risking the business. You want someone to feel like in 3 months I'm not going to be sitting there like shaking my head like, what was I thinking? So I had done that with my career, and so got to a position where I could be at this level where, hey, you're looking at a deck, leaning into it a little bit. You're not just like, I don't know about that. You're like, oh, what is Joe up to? What does he want to do? So this is the first deck that we had, and it was a little bit. It showed myself, my co-founder, We wanted to do this, and this is 2012. This is December 2012. Way before Airbnb and all these other companies are like, live like a local. We were on this, and it was pretty much the same business model. We wrote down how we would spend the money, and I can tell you this debt is still relevant. We pretty much still have the same business plan today. Our first few cities, we launched Austin, and we launched Houston, and we launched San Francisco, LA, and New York, and then DC and Chicago. So we stuck to this plan with some tweaks in between. We had key assumptions. A lot of those questions I was talking about was validating our assumptions. When you're starting a business is a hypothesis. You know, Amazon is a hypothesis. People are going to shop online. Uber is a hypothesis. People are going to want to get from point A to B, not through their own car or through public transit, but through this thing in the middle that's like, it's like owning a car, but it's even more temporary. So it's a thesis, and that thesis is backed up by assumptions. So these were the assumptions we had, and they're still true today.
I have a question for you.
Yes?
In the beginning at least, a lot of your investors ask you about the return on investment.
Yeah, so let me go in here and show you. This is the beginning of talking about the return on investment. So when you show defensibility, then you're starting to show someone that you're thinking about it. So we were saying, is this Yelp? No, here's why. Is this TripAdvisor? No, here's why. But as a result of saying that, we're also creating a market for ourselves by saying, we have two potential acquirers. Because these are two companies where if we can differentiate ourselves from them, we're competitive to them. So that's partially answering that question. And then we also go through all the rest of the industry and show who else we're in this space with. I'll tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the companies on this list have been interested in acquiring us in the last 12 months. So that's like, again, that's proving the hypothesis. Hey, I can forward an email to all my investors from the global head of product of one of these companies that's worth more than $10 million and say, that validates the investment you made. That this person is leaning in and asking like, hey, are we interested in being acquired? So does that kind of answer? Like we were already going toward a market. We said travel is a very acquisitive industry. We are going to be acquired. That was like day one. So in terms of return on investment, it was, well, how much can you get acquired for? And it's like, well, do we need analysis? Like how much have companies like us been acquired for in the last few years? Finding that out, or finding out if they are acquired, finding out the budget stuff. So that was a part of our initial pitch was, hey, in 5 to 7 years, if not less, we're probably going to get acquired.
You asked about that. I'm going to say, ask about the time frame.
Yeah, no, any startup investment, early stage, 5 to 7 years. I think once you're going, once you have what's called product market fit, then maybe you can start saying 3 to 5 years. But I think 5 to 7 years is a more reasonable time frame. If it's more than that, it's probably too long for a business that you're taking an investment. If it's 10 years, then maybe you have a lifestyle business on your hand and you should just bootstrap it with revenue. But if it's 5 years, then okay, that's a good enough time frame for you to build something meaningful and get a good multiple from an acquirer.
I think the other thing to add there is for investors, funds are generally 10 years or less.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
if I can't return the money to the LPs in that time frame, there's no point doing it.
Yep. And so we had this idea about locals will create content and all this stuff. So this is what it looks like back here. And then what I'll show you is, this is what our deck is today. So now we're not selling the dream, we're not selling our hypothesis, we're selling the truth. So this is what we are. So we've gone from just like experienced local to now this is what we do. Last month I was able to demo for Tim Cook in Austin, which is amazing. So I put that in our deck just because it just helps. And then I still have a small team intentionally because it keeps our burn rate low. I don't want to spend a bunch of money. A lot of companies, they scale up and hire 25 people, and that's fine for companies that have like 18, 24 months of venture capital back runway. But for us, we average 71 days of runway our first 2 years. So we had 2 months and 1 week of runway for 3 years straight. And then just to tell you, like I'm the founder. In 2012, at the job that I mentioned that I had before this company, I made $220,000 in 1 year. And thankfully I did that because I've made like probably half that since combined in 5 years. My accountant always is like amazed by this, but in 2016 I made $15,000. In 2015 I made $15,000. But the value of the company has gone up ninefold since I started it. So to me, I'm playing to the equity, and that's another thing you have to have in mind when you're fundraising is like how much skin in the game can you have? Is it based on time? How much money do you have? Is it based on like what are the financial obligations? So I've de-risked my life. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a car payment. My highest bill is life insurance because I have a humane policy for this company. That's it. So I really just minimize my own personal burn and the business's burn. And that's something to think about as you're trying to navigate this path of half bootstrapping and then half raising money. So this is what we've done. We've raised over $3 million, and I'm giving you like all the information here. These are some of my investors here. We are about to, probably tomorrow, we'll close another $500,000 round. I have 61 individual investors, no VCs, 0 VCs, 62 actually, individual people on my cap table, which is the spreadsheet that shows you, who all owns our company, which you can probably pull up.
He shows everything.
Let's see if I can show you. I'm going to give you like more information than like you probably ever seen with this stuff, but I'll just show you a part of my cap table. So what this shows is like all the history of people putting money in the business. So the summary is, there's common stock, there's Series C. It shows how much people own. My investors all combined own like 45%. And then it shows, here's a list of every single person that is invested and what percentage of stock they have. So it's a lot of people with small percentages of stock. Some people have more. So this is what a cap table is going to look like. It's going to show you common stock, that's your employee option pool, that could be advisors. This is your employee option pool. These are warrants. Some of my advisors have warrants. And then this is where money went in. So these are people purchasing shares. This person put in $500,000, he got this many shares. This person put in $25,000, he got this many shares. And so this is what a cap table is going to look like once you get that going. I don't do this myself. I can just tell you it's worth it to have a law firm do this stuff and find a law firm that will take deferred payments. I probably have a $12,000 tab running with my law firm right now, and because they're used to working with startups, so that's not uncommon for them. So I would just say that like find a law firm that works with tech startups because they may be more favorable with like doing deferred payments. Let me go back to this. So going back to the deck, I was talking about the levels earlier. So level 1, I talked about taking a job, getting industry knowledge. You want to get that knowledge transfer. You want to have a network. Level 2 is doing the homework, doing those 40 to 50 questions you need answers to about your business before you start talking to people. Level 3, friends and family. So for this business, that first 12 people that I wrote down, those were all friends. 8 of them invested. Out of the first 18 people I pitched, 12 of them invested. These are all friends, people I knew before this business existed. So they're friends, and what I mean by friends is they're people who they used to be my boss. And I maintained the relationship 6 years after I worked for them in a way where I had credibility with them. Level 3 is what I call revenue crawl. And revenue crawl doesn't mean you need to be able to make enough money to pay all your salaries or all this stuff. Revenue crawl means you're trying to make money in a way that you plan on making money in the future. That way, more institutional and professional investors can look at this business as something that has potential to monetize. That's what people are scared about. Are you ever going to get to a point where this is monetizing? So revenue crawl for us was our first year we got a couple of like $1,500 and $3,000 little partnerships to just show, hey, we're already doing this in one city in Austin. Imagine if we're in 100 cities. 100 cities times $3,000 little things, we could actually scale this out. So with just the crawl a little bit.
But 62 investors. Yeah, that's a lot of people in the cap table.
It is.
So, what was the minimum investment criteria?
So,
and the second part of that is, 62 people, I couldn't imagine that you update 62 people every quarter. So,
every month, probably every other week.
Who was your lead, or how did you structure that?
Yeah, I'll go through and show you. So, That's a great question. And so let's see. So I have a group email called Investors at Localer, and only my investors get these emails. I send them emails all the time. Here's an email I just sent. Expansion. We are now live in Mexico City, Barcelona, Madrid, yada, yada, yada on that. Revenue. We just kicked off this thing with Car2Go. We're working with JetBlue. We're working on a deal with Nike right now. Fundraising. We're putting the finishing touches on this mini round. Product. We have a new app coming out this week. And then some travel industry thoughts. Hey, Airbnb just lost their CMO. TripAdvisor just lost their head of product. That kind of thing to talk about the industry. And then all the investors get it, and they can individually respond. This is Brett. This is the guy who was the founder and CEO of that tech company that paid me $220,000. Thanks for the great update. This is an email from another one. Great update. Who are you talking to? I would certainly take myself. This guy's saying he's interested in reinvesting. This is an email from one of my advisors. Really great update. Thank you for reporting. So I do that every month. They love that. And honestly, they get emails from me every week or every other week. You have to keep people informed. I have so many investors who tell me that they send they like, can I send this email to one of my other founders? Because they don't do this, they need to be doing this. So that's one way to do it. And then in terms of the mechanics, the $25,000 was the minimum for if you didn't know me. If you knew me before, then I would let you come down on the minimum because then I perceive you as more strategic. Like if I know you're a founder or a CEO and that kind of, you want to put in $10,000, so be it. But if I don't know you, then 25 was the minimum. And then we used, for the first 3 years, we used this thing called convertible debt notes, which I'll show you an example of. This is a convertible debt note saying this person is putting in $25,000 on this date. This is their name. And it matures at a certain point. So in this case, we are automatically converting this debt. Typically, these things last for 18 months or 2 years. For this one, this is like a mini round we're doing. We're automatically converting this into preferred shares in our company at the end of this year. But this is kind of a standard thing. Any law firm that works with startups, you can honestly get this off the internet probably for free. But then you should have, what I would say with law firms is you should have them give you their standard documents because it won't cost a lot for them to just give that to you. Or you can find something called NVCA, which is the National Venture Capital Association. They have standard documents for certain things as well. So this is like a standard thing, and every one of my investors has signed one of these convertible debt agreements. And then every one of my investors has also signed this thing, which is called a Series C agreement. Last year, we did our first price round, which is saying the company is now worth $8.7 million. From when I first started, it was worth zero. And this is, you're now agreeing that the share price is as such, which in this case it's 64 cents a share. This is how many shares exist. And then every single one of my investors is listed on this thing. And then every single one of them had to sign it. So this is like a lot of filing stuff you have to do. This document cost me $40,000 to do with legal fees. The first document I showed you, the convertible note agreement, cost me $2,000. So you want to do as many convertible debt as you can, but those convertible debt things, it's like a loan, so it has interest, and at some point you have to convert it to equity, or you owe it. Or like in 18 months, an investor can be like, I want my money back, and they can sue the company, and if you don't have the money, then they can bankrupt the company. So you want to keep that good rapport with your investors because like for us, we hit the 18-month mark and we hadn't had enough money to convert it to equity. So I had to go back to my investors and say, I need a 12-month extension. They gave me the 12-month extension and then we got the round. So keep that good. Don't ever get into an adversarial relationship with your investors, and the best way to do that is to keep them informed with at least monthly updates. No, I say at least quarterly, but the earlier you are, monthly is good because they want to see that action. So let's see, there's that. Sorry, I know I'm going a little bit over time here. The next thing, okay, so these documents are good because they allow you to go to the next level up, which are angel investor groups, which there are dozens in the country. So I've raised $300,000 from the Central Texas Angel Network, which is a group of 200 angel investors in Austin. I've raised $100,000 from the San Antonio Angel Network. I'm about to raise more money from the Houston Angel Network, from the Rio Grande Valley Angel Network. Every state has some angel group where there are 50 or 100 angel investors together that all look at the same documents. And and they're all going to assess your business together. The first time I ever pitched an angel group, I pitched something like 80 people, and only one person in the room invested. But that one person invested $100,000. So it was material for me to go there. Whereas I've gone to rooms and pitched 100 people, and then I end up getting like $3,000, $10,000 checks. So it's kind of hit or miss. They're all different. But you want to talk to people who either raised money from that group before, or talk to the executive director of that group in advance and get a sense of what they like to see, how they tend to introduce deals to the community, and to their network. So that's the next level. And then from there, you can go on to like institutional VC, which I am 100% avoiding with this business. Let me know if I have time, Chad. 3 minutes. Okay. So VC is an interesting animal. VC is a return. It's a numbers game. So for my business, for example, on paper, my business is worth like $9 million on paper. Now, theoretically, I think my board thinks it's worth maybe $15 to $20 million. Now, even if a VC agrees that it's worth $15 to $20 million, if I take $5 million from them and they get 25 or 33% of the company, now I really probably need to sell the company for something like $80 to $100 million at least to make them happy. You know, whereas my angel investors, well, on paper, we're worth $9 million and we get bought for $35 million, they all get 3-4x return. They're super happy. And then I have 62 people lined up to invest in my next thing before I even have a deck. So that's the game you want to be thinking about is your business, it's not about the valuation today, it's about can it get to a place in 12 to 24 months where it's going to really attract both venture capital and, you know, acquisition opportunities that are going to make it meaningful for you.
So why is it that angel investors expect less than institutional VCs?
These are individuals, number one. So they're individuals. They don't. Whereas VCs have limited partners. They have these big like university endowments and foundations that need big returns, right? Angel investors also do fewer deals. So I have angel investors that do, some of them on the high end do 12 deals a year, but most of them I think maybe they do 3 deals a year. So the reality is, on 3 deals a year, 2 of them are going to die like probably within 6 months. And that one that survives, if they can get a 4x return, it'll pay for the losses on the 2. You know, whereas a VC, they do 100 investments, they lose out on 90 of those investments. They need those 10 to pay out at a multiple in order to pay for the 90 they lost on. So it's just it's a numbers game.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take a couple more questions.
How do you incorporate? Are you a C corporation?
Yeah, so actually we did this wrong. When we started, we were a Texas-based LLC because I didn't hire a tech attorney. I just hired like a corporate attorney. He set it up the wrong way. And then about a year later, my board was like, this is the law firm you should hire. I hired them, and they fixed it. It cost about $3,500, but then we filed as a Delaware C Corp.
And have you used safe notes?
I haven't used safes. Safes are becoming more and more popular. It's that convertible note thing that I showed you is like a version of that. There's convertible debt, there's warrants, and there's safes. Safes are becoming more popular because these investors a lot of them have been like snake bitten on these convertible notes from like 5 years ago that never converted to equity. And then the company went bankrupt, they never got any money back. So these safes are kind of a device to give the investor a little bit more stability and like certainty that like, hey, the company is still gonna get me something out of this. So, you know, even if they get bought for like pennies on the dollar, like I'm getting paid out of that. Like I'm not gonna lose all of it.
Hi, so I don't have a money question.
Yeah.
I have a community question.
Yeah.
Because I'm Papa Plus, I run a plus size business online. And my question is, how are you able to really grow your communities in these individual cities, and what advice would you have? And I'm doing clothes and you're doing travel, but
Yeah.
are there any kind of similarities?
Yeah, they're very similar, I'm sure, because I've worked in and around fashion. And what I would say is every business there's a pull side and there's a push side. The pull side of our business is travelers. But you have to push a lot on them because there's so much there's so much noise. So what we've done is our average contributor for Localer, which we handpick our contributors in each of these cities. Usually 2 of them to start and then maybe like a dozen after 6 months. These people on average have 8,000 to 10,000 followers on Instagram. So we do that because we can kind of use them to push our message out through their reach, through their blogs, through their Instagram. When we started, it cost us $55,000 to launch a city, and now it costs us $1,300 to launch a city.
Wow.
So that's because we, instead of $55,000 on Google AdWords and Facebook spend, all this stuff, it's $1,300 spent on getting the right localers, the right 3, 4, 5, 6 influential local food bloggers, fashion bloggers to join our platform, and then they help us expand. All right, one more question.
So you mentioned that you raised a lot of money from like family and friends. So you use the convertible debt note with them as well?
I used the convertible debt note for the first $2.2 million I raised, and then the Series C price thing for the last million and something.
Gotcha. And just like that last, how long do you make those for? Like, you said like.
So usually you put a cap on it. So there's something called a valuation cap. So you can say, when I first started, my first 2 investors, they both put in $25,000, and it was a $1 million cap. So they got 2.5% of the company each.
Yeah.
Because it was just an idea. It was 12 slides. That was it. And they were quick. It wasn't like they told me 3 weeks later. It was like within 10 minutes of meeting, they were like, "Here's the money." And so I was like, "Here's great terms for you," you know. But then then it moved up. The valuation cap on the note then moved up to $2 million, and I raised maybe $50,000 at that level. And then I was like, okay, you have a product out now, so this thing is worth $3 million. So then it went up. And then after 6 months, so what you want to do is you want to lay out what your milestones are going to be, and you want to be able to validate that against your evaluation. So we say, last year, you know, we talked to Airbnb and Priceline and Copenhagen and all these companies, or whatever, and they think we're worth $5 to $8 million with 26 cities in the U.S. only. We're in 62 cities now. We're global. We're worth some multiple of that. You know, so now we've hit some new milestone, and then if we're in 100 cities, that's another milestone. So we kind of telepath what the value is against the milestones, and then try to make people believe that. Because I've been told that fundraising is just convincing someone of your KPI, that the one that matters, whatever the key performance indicator is of your business, that's all fundraising is. It's like, all you need to focus on is user growth. We have crazy user growth. Don't worry about revenue. Or all you need to focus on is revenue. You don't care about user growth. You know, so for us, we know that user growth isn't our story anymore, even though we're growing. It's because if you're Airbnb, every single one of local users knows about Airbnb and uses it, right? So if Airbnb has 100 million monthly users and we have 1.7 million, if they acquire us, it's not like now you have 101.7 million users and that's immaterial. It doesn't matter, right? It's like, but what is it that we have that other companies don't have? We have our community, we have our content. That's what we're getting value on. So that's what we're focused on growing. The user stuff is the secondary. My email is joah, Joah, @localer.com. I'm super responsive on email. I'm also on LinkedIn. I write a ton on LinkedIn. There are a bunch of free and accessible articles I've written about everything from what happened after we got rejected from Y Combinator, which the short is the next week I got $500,000, to how I raised the first $1 million without VCs or AngelList. So there's a lot of stuff that I put out there, and check it out. Thank you so much. If you can all wave, I'm going to get this in my story. All right.
There's a camera right behind you, but I think it's.
All right. So next up,
Joah at
I'm like
localer.com.
Stacy. I'll let you guys go. We definitely are going to include in the next section Jason Giles, who is also the creative everything. For my company, Tinsel, he designed everything. If you guys are at all familiar with my company, a necklace that transforms into headphones. And Jason did everything except for design the actual product. As far as our brand goes. Okay, sure. He's the brains behind the brand for my own company and also for Black and Brown founders. And so I'm really excited to have him talk. He is one of the most amazing designers and brand and creative solutionists that I have ever known, and I've known this guy since we were in middle school. So, all right, and he's from Philly.
Really quick, I don't know how you put this thing.
Oh, yeah. I just did this.
How you guys doing today? I know how to do it. So,
I've always like the words of like, oh, like,
sorry guys, just a little bit of technical.
The previous speaker has to act as an AV consultant.
Sorry. This guy's the CEO. He's done that with reputation. That's so cool, right?
okay, that's fine. So the whole idea is that it's basically
Is everybody here from Philly? No? Who's not? Is anybody else from Colorado?
Colorado.
I mean, I'm not from in Colorado, but I'm not of Colorado.
I was at a conversation with Mary.
Yeah, no problem.
She asked us to move over.
Yeah, just.
Oh no, anywhere. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Just have to scoot over a little bit.
Okay. You just didn't want me in your picture.
I don't want too many wangs, hey.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Might be in live stream. How big is the account? Oh, my bad. You got all the bills out.
So I did local studies and women's studies. Yeah, totally. So undergraduate and then I did.
Anybody here already have a brand? Just out of curiosity, they've done all that brand work. Very dope.
Work.
Just a quick show, another quick show of hands. How many people are like really happy with what they've got? Tell the truth. 3, 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I'm not asking that to sell you. I'm kind of out of the game. I got this other venture I'm doing right now, but I gotta say that for my shareholders so they don't think that I'm spilling my time. But so I'm out of the game, and, but I've learned a lot, and I feel like I can share a lot for you guys who are doing the brand thing. I'm trying to do it big. Now I'm done stalling.
was gonna, like, there's kind of like, I just like stuff with it. I had a, I ended up learning so it's some tap part, past business, I guess it has to like literally everything around us. Yeah, so I've been studying myself a lot. So it's like everyone we have for a while. So I just
Alright. We did it. How many CEOs does it take to get So hey everybody, I want to talk to you guys about building a timeless brand. So hello, Black and Brown founders.
Hi.
How are you? A little bit about my background. I am a creative solutionist. The difference between an artist or a creative solutionist is like artists make art, creative solutionists empower business. I pretty much what I do is I help people figure out who they are, get them to the heart of who they are, and I help them present that to the world in the most authentic, beautiful, and effective way possible. That's what I do. So just so you need like some little proof, you know, with the pudding, I did the rebrand for backcountry.com a little while back. They've since changed it. It's terrible now. I rebranded Case Logic a little while back. I branded a building by the Heinz Group. I don't know if you guys are familiar with architecture, but they're like the premier architecture group in the world. Geological Society of America, Beyond Clothing Packaging. I've done some beer stuff. I've done some guitar stuff. I've done some Nickelodeon stuff. I've done some dog clipper stuff. I've done some stuff. I think what I want to get you guys to understand though is that what a brand is. What I don't, would you agree that stuff, even though it went pretty fast, was pretty dope enough? It was okay, right? Avoid the dope trap, y'all. Don't fall into the dope trap. It sets you up. So look at these 3 logos. Those are dope logos, right? Like you got the Snoopy Peacock. That's like half peacock, half lady. You get it. That's pretty dope. Some of y'all here look like they ain't here right now. You got the Guru Minds brand, right? That was for sports. It's funny because I actually branded this. I forgot what the company was for, but they don't exist, so who cares? And then Brutality, which is you can just find any dope. You find dope logos all over the web, all over the internet. Logo inspiration, blah blah blah. Dope for bro. Whack for stack. The new Pepsi logo is whack. I'm not having a conversation about it. It's terrible. It's been terrible for years. The Walmart logo, it's just the word Walmart with a sphincter next to it. The pink people. Oh man, why was I forgetting their name? Sherman Williams, thank you. Cover the earth in blood, sure. Why not? They're whack. But those cats got money, right? They're doing okay, right? It doesn't matter. So I guess the first thing I want you to understand before I get into everything else is my rule number 1. Dope logos don't make dope brands.
Right.
Dope companies do. So get your priorities straight, people. Here's what we're going to do. I need 2 volunteers. I need the first volunteer. Come here. Come on up.
Wait, volunteer for what though?
It's easy. It's easy. I'm gonna ask you a question, and then nobody's gonna know the question I asked you until I get done asking. This is super simple, really simple. And then the second volunteer can stay in the chair.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha. Boom. What's your name? Jay. Nice to meet you. Everybody call me Jay.
Sit down and stay here.
You can do what you want to do. Okay, maybe sit down.
Okay.
So, okay. I know what Lindsay's doing this weekend, right? I need another volunteer. Over here, what should she wear to do what she's doing this weekend?
Oh.
What should she wear? Tell me what she should wear. You don't know? Throw the guess out. Yeah, what kind of shirt? Nice shirt? I mean, look at Lindsay. I mean, what should she be doing? Come on. Okay. Cardigan tank top. Something nice, though, right? Lindsay, what are you doing this weekend?
I'm going on a road trip across Oregon.
You got to do some packing, right?
I have to pack, yeah.
So you probably shouldn't be dressing that dope, right?
No.
So I think the point that I'm trying to make is it's impossible, and plus you don't even know Lindsay, right? It's impossible to dress something if you don't know what the thing is. A brand is a living thing. Your brand is a living thing. If you do not know what that brand is, who that brand is, rather, then you do not know how to dress it. You do not have the tools to give somebody else the task of dressing it. You have to know who it is, to properly know where it should go, how it should speak, and what it should look like. So rule number 2, brand is only, and this is important, you're going to hear me say this a couple times, a brand is only as good as it behaves. Take the time to raise your brand right. Okay? Number 3. We're moving through. Okay, building brand behaviors. This is important. You're only as good as the questions that you ask. My brother talked about this earlier. I was like, yeah, I see you, man. So, and these are just some of the questions, right? You're only good at the questions that you ask. I want to highlight a few of the ones that I think are important. I want to give this deck to everybody at the end. I'll give you a link to download this deck. Yo, ask these questions. One, what are you really in the business of? Show of hands, McDonald's. What are they in the business of? Who said it? Real estate. My man. He gets it. Most people would say hamburger, right? So if you're, oh, she left. She's so dope. But the girl that's selling that does the plus size dresses, right? The plus size pop-ups. Like, what is she really in the business of? What is she really selling? Is she selling dresses to the plus size girl, or is she selling something more? Is she doing something more? It's up to her to understand that. Who is your audience? I'm skipping along. Who are you? How does your audience see you now? How do you want them to see you? What are your future goals? Do you have an exit plan? I'm getting into that. Because if I'm branding a company that's going to be around for a couple of years, that's different than if I'm branding a company that's going to be around for a couple decades, a couple centuries. You see what I'm saying? Because a brand for a couple years, they need to be on that trend. A brand for a couple centuries, they need to be timeless. What pain does your brand alleviate? What are the big benefits that it has? What's unique about your brand? How would you describe your brand? When I'm asking these questions, if you don't mind, anecdotally, Ania, I'll bring up Ania. So Ania, a long time ago, we did this process for Tinsel, and I'll show you this work a little bit later than we did. And I'm like getting off the plane. She picks me up from the airport. She's like, Jay, we're going to chill. We're going to chop it up. I'm going to show you all the places that's happening in San Francisco, what to do. And I was like, Anita, this is tough work. This is hard. We got to get into it. She's like, okay, but I've done this before with like Boxer. I've seen this happen. I was like, okay. Towards the end of the trip, like it was like I was getting out of the car. She's like, Jay, I love you, but you got to get out. You got to get out the car. Because it's hard work. It's emotionally draining work. So you got to go through these questions because you're burdening that baby. I'm going to give you 2 questions that I normally say for myself, but like I said, I'm out of the game. So I'm going to tell y'all the 2 really, really great questions to ask. What are you afraid of? I'm going to delve into this one a bit. if you can tell me what you're afraid of, I can figure out how to position you to conquer that fear. I can make that brand something that you're not. I can make your brand your champion when you can't be a champion for yourself. Now that's hard. That's hard to do, but I can help build the brand towards that. And then this is a new guy. Pivot the brand in 3 ways, right? So for example, so say you do, Ania does tinsel, right? Right now it's headphone necklaces. If she pivoted one way, it could be, Ania, pivot your brand one more way. Tinsel does something new now.
We make like chargeable purses.
Chargeable? You see what I'm saying? But so if I get a couple more of those things, I can see the commonality, right? So I'm putting you into a visionary place, right? And then I get to a position where I can build your brand to be something that is going to fit that visionary mentality. That's super important. And I know y'all like, this is boring. Like, well,
Nah.
Okay, so the next thing, once you have all of those questions, right, everything gets a little bit easier. Now we build the brand pyramid. I'm sure some people, anybody seen this before? Brand pyramid? Ania had one, nobody? Well, then I made it up. No, I'm just playing. So the first thing you want to do, you want to start at the very bottom pillar, which is your features and attributes, right? And that's just a list of what your brand provides. It can be as long as needed. It's the what's, it's the nuts, it's the bolts. It's just what it is. We do this. There's no why behind it. You know, we've got, what's that brand that Rihanna has? What's that called?
Fenty.
Look at y'all. Fenty, and they've got how many colors?
40.
Look at it. See, they get it.
Wow.
I got 4 right now.
So that's a feature, that's an attribute, that's just something that they have. It just is a thing, right? Then you go into a functional benefit. What's the functional benefit of being able to go in the store and choose from 40 different colors, right?
I can find my shade.
Find my shade. Easy. So the functional benefit is the utility of the thing being provided. You have to answer all these questions. Next thing, the emotional benefit. What's the emotional benefit, sister?
I feel so beautiful.
You feel so beautiful. Finally, I can go into a store, and I was raised in a family where they did way too much Mary Kay selling, and I know what that struggle is like for sisters to go out there trying to find the shade that matches their complexion. That's an emotional benefit. So now we're starting to get into the behavior zone, right? After this is just the stuff. Now you're talking about behaviors. Well, based on that emotional benefit, what can you say? What one word can you say about that person's personality, that brand's personality? How would you describe that brand? Maybe bold, maybe innovative, maybe fierce. I'm describing Rihanna pretty much, right? So you begin to add a person, but what is it for your brand? What is it for your brand with the concussion thing? You know what I mean? That's dope. A lot of y'all have some really dope projects going on. Like, what is it for your brand with the secret shopper moves that you're making? Dope. Like, you got to figure out all of these things for you. They should be different for everybody. What are the values? Based on all of these things, what can you say these people's values are? Ania, I don't know if she left, but
I'm here.
okay. Hey, Ania. So I love Tinsel's values so much. One of them is innovation should give people what they always wanted but never knew was possible. Did I say that right, Ania? Yeah, but yes, exactly. It's just so powerful. That's a value. You can run a company like you can instill that in people, right? It's important to know that value. You see this now. This we're just talking about a company that does stuff. And now we're starting to talk about a person. It's becoming someone now. And then you break it down to the essence. The essence is that one sentence statement that defines a brand behavior. It should resonate with the janitor and the CEO alike. Everybody's got to get it. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What's Nike's brand essence? What do you think it is?
Performance.
Performance, give me another guess. Nike's brand essence.
If you have a body, you're an athlete.
You're so close.
I used to work there.
But like everybody's an athlete, right? I love it. You probably said it better than I said it, right? So if you think about that, that makes sense in a lot of ways. Kevin Hart is a spokesperson. Everybody, if you have a body, you're an athlete. Just do it. Their tagline, I'm surprised y'all are smart. I'm surprised nobody didn't say just do it. But if you have a body, you're an athlete. If you think about it, everything that they do, it comes from that. You have to find out this is how you get there. And again, I'm going to give these slides out to you all so y'all can do your thing. But does that make sense? So number 3, and this is important. You can't articulate what your brand is? All right. Other people are going to try it and get it super wrong. You have to articulate what the brand is. Start off by asking yourself those hard questions, right? And then start doing that pyramid exercise, and you can begin to determine what your brand is. All right, now that's the kind of woo-woo, boring stuff, right? It's finally logo time. Right? You guys talk about logo. Okay, so what is a logo? It's a visual bookmark. That's it. That is it. That is all it is. It is nothing else but that. For example, this is the Black and Brown Founders logo. Whenever you see this logo, it'll serve as a bookmark to an experience that it left with you. The Black and Brown Founders logo is saying, remember that time I taught you all that cool stuff? Yeah, I do remember that. Every time you see that logo, you're going to think about this. Maybe you think about this crazy guy that stood up with a weird calculator thing on his jacket, telling you about how to make a brand. Maybe you think about Anita's talks. Maybe you think about the time you saw her later. But that's all it is. That logo recalls a behavior that was represented. So make sure you get the behavior right. But I don't want you to talk about behavior. Let's talk about making a logo. If you're going to make a logo, if you're going to have people make a logo, then the best of the best people will tell you this. Have them start in black and white. If it doesn't work in black and white, it does not work. Period. If it's not vector, if it's not scalable, it does not work. Period. And if it doesn't relate to your essence, and I'm sorry, I always keep going back to that, then it's just why did you waste your time, right? So these are a few examples of some logos that I've made over the years. You'll notice this one. Some of them better than others, in my opinion. But they all work black and white. I can make them 40 feet tall. I can make them 2 inches tall. But they all work. Start black and white, and everything will be all right. So here's logo honesty in action, right? When you do a logo and you start with the black and white, you have the ability to actually make sure that you are staying on track with your essence, which is super important. So these are 5. I'm sorry, I'm putting you on blast a lot today. These are 5 marks that I put together for Anita. Right? We started with the black and white, but I walked you through the process. Then we went down. She picked 3, and then we went to the color. Then she's like, okay, I like this guy down here. And then I did a bunch of colors for that, and then we wound up on the beauty mark, which is right here, that resonates with Tensu's brand essence. Love everything you wear. Think about it. They make headphone necklaces. You wear headphones, right? Love everything you wear. They shouldn't just be like tangled like things at the bottom of your bag. So number 4, you're building a visual bookmark. You should prioritize representing your essence as best as you possibly can. That's got to be the first thing. The number 5, part 5, or 6, or whatever. I'm bad at Roman numerals. I don't even know why I do it. The visual brand trinity is important. These are 3 things that go out in front of your brand, with your brand, attached to your brand, that even if you don't have a logo, are extremely important. So 1, your typefaces. Again, I'm calling on Tensu here. Like if you're using a typeface, you should know why you're using that typeface. It should be parallel to your company. Like for example, Gotham typeface was originally commissioned by GQ magazine, fashion magazine. It was designed to represent the timeless sans serif metal cut lettering found in New York City. The condensed version seen here was designed to offer more versatility without sacrificing its authenticity. I get that deep. Like everything that you do has to be that deep. There has to be a reason behind everything that you do. Like just like as a person, there's a reason behind everything you do. So when you're talking about typography, you want to be able to do it in a few different ways. Like you want to be able to set it. So this is an example of that same type set basic. A little bit more intermediate. Like, okay, somebody's been in design school. Okay, I got you. I feel you. And then a little bit more advanced, right? Somebody's doing some crazy stuff. I don't know why it works. It just does. Do you know what I mean? But your toolkit should be that versatile. It should be able to go out in front of you and work for work. Everybody should be able to use it however they want to use it. And no matter what, it should always feel like your brand. That's important. You can't just interchange these things. It's bad for you. The colors. Me, I do this thing where I give colors a little name, a little story, right? So the tinsel. Is this one? Okay. So so this is Miss Campbell, Miss Ritchie, Miss Middleton, Miss Hepburn. They're all fashion people, so they're all like it's a fashion brand, so it makes sense. And then I tell people why this is the primary color, right? So simple yet effective, recognition, purpose, like the color of royalty. It's got all these things happening with it. Now I'm building a brand. I walk you along this process, and you're like, yeah, this is my brand. Darn right. And then you do the basic color, you do the subcolors, you do all of that, and then you do the textures, right? So you've seen this before. The texture is important because textures give you something that nobody else has, right? You can't just be everybody else. I can't stand when people say like, "Oh, give me Lululemon." No, not Lululemon. And the beautiful thing is, if you do the process that I talked about before, it's easier to not want to do those things. Anita, how am I doing on time?
You got 7 minutes.
Sweet. So now you're seeing it in execution. These textures, you got these watercolors, you got flowers here, and these were just the concepts, right? And then it turns into the actual thing. So this is the actual tinsel brand. This is the actual packaging. I don't have any with me, but it's nice. You've got icons. You've got other things. These are all the elements that go in front of the brand. Now check this out. If you take the logo away, you take the name away from everything that's there, it's still Tinsel's brand. If you cover up that logo, it's still Tinsel's brand. So here's the reason why that's important. If you're doing branding the right way, if somebody else tries to jack your swag and put their logo on elements that you already out there doing, your brand advocates will be like, that's Tinsel's brand. Stop. And then they gotta stop it. It's pretty dope. So the visual brand trend. Rule number 3, cover up your logo. Your brand should still feel and look like your brand. But the only way it feels and looks like your brand is if you do that essence work. And you discover what your brand is. Everything about what was done for Tinsel, everything about what's been done for Black and Brown founders, the face with the little B in the side. Fun fact, and I'm saying this is okay because like I said, I'm retired, I'm out of the game. But the Black and Brown founders logo is the best logo I've ever done in my life. Like if I show that to my professionals, they'd be like, okay, maybe we were wrong about you. But those rules. So the key takeaways: 1, and remember these: dope logos don't make dope brands. Dope companies do. 2, a brand is only as good as it behaves. Take the time to raise your brand right. 3, you can't articulate who your brand is. Fine. Other people are going to get it super wrong. 4, when you're doing a logo, you're building a visual bookmark. Prioritize representing your essence the best you can. 5, if you cover up your logo, your brand should still feel like your brand. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, you can download it here. You can reach out to me there. And this is my first presentation, so do I have time for questions?
You got 3 minutes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about anything? Yes. Wait. No, my thing, what that means is because I do this, I'm also the CEO of a cannabis business intelligence platform called Zephyr, and that's a whole nother conversation. but because of the time that takes, I'm not doing this as much as I used to. But if somebody has a really great product and really great vision, I'm there for you. I'm down for you. You just gotta let me know. That's the win. You guys could be what makes the win happen. Next question.
I was just gonna say thank you. I mean, you kind of threw the ball up, had the bat on your shoulder, and you hit out of the park. So I mean, I just want to
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell my mom you said that. What's up?
Where did you learn how to, do all this and make your own brand?
That's a really great question. So I went to Penn State. Yeah, I know. But I went to Penn State. I studied graphic design. It was really hard. I don't know how it is now, but only like 15 people get in, only 12 people make it out. It's like the gridiron or something. I don't know. But it's really crazy. Then I did internships. I worked. I beat the pavement. I was homeless for a little while. I was working while I was homeless. It was a really great experience. I think no matter what you do, especially if you're in a creative field, the best thing I can tell you to do is learn the business side of things and learn, like, again, what people are actually afraid of, because if you actually get to understand and hear people's hearts, you can actually be in a position to solve their problem. Very few people are intelligent or emotionally intelligent enough to come to you and actually articulate what their problem is. I don't care what level you are in life, it is your responsibility to discover what that is if it isn't given to you. So I guess my path has just been a path that has given me the hard lessons enough to know how to do that. I hope that answers the question.
I just want to say something that amplifies the slide. You had the slide with all the questions, like knowing your brand. Yeah. That's something that I'm constantly doing on a personal level too, not just on a business level, but I think that the same stuff applies to who you are as an entrepreneur and what you're trying to do with this specific business. I am trying to be a serial entrepreneur, so I don't have to live with this business for more than 5-7 years, so I think that's something that I would recommend too.
Oh, totally. And I guess, okay. I think that's super important. Authenticity is everything. Like I said, I try to make brands figure out who you are and help you be authentic. I have to be authentic with myself. When I come up here and talk to you guys, this is who I am. I'm not cool. You know what I mean? I'm not suave. That's not me. So if you are building a brand, if you are building, something, either your life or your brand, and the brand is a life, just make sure it's becoming what it needs to be versus what everybody else, you may think everybody else wants it to be. Because you or your brand. And then because the right people will become attracted to you. Either you or your brand.
We'll do one more question.
One more question. Who wants it? Yeah, what's up? Oh, that you? Okay, sorry. Hey, my man, how you doing?
Good. One of your slides said, "What are you afraid of?"
Yeah.
You said you would poke at someone about that.
Yeah.
Is it because you're trying to find how to make that what you're afraid of an advantage of yours, or to steer away?
Yeah. No. Great question. You go right towards it. You have to go right towards. What are you afraid of? Okay, I'm afraid that I'm not. I'm afraid that I'm not gonna make it, or I'm afraid. Everybody's got different fears. If you think about it right now, then you say when you talk to when you ask God, right? Everybody's got those different things. You have to run towards it because that's where the truth is, right? That's like this. In my opinion, I'm not a psychologist or an anthropologist, but I act like I am. I believe that there is something inside of us that the closer we get to the things that we're supposed to be doing, the more afraid we get, the more I couldn't do that, I shouldn't do that. So the reason why I'm trying to get to that fear is because I'm trying to see what is that last wall that we need to break so you're ready to do this. And in that way, when you speak as a brand, you're like, boom, I'm here. What's up? You're afraid, I was afraid too. Come here, let's deal with this together. That's what I'm trying to get at. Did that answer your question? Jason.
Awesome. Okay, we have one more breakout session here. Eric Jordan is going to do his talk on how to go from entrepreneur to entrepreneur, and then we are going to go back over to the other side, the main room in the forum, and there's going to be a really awesome panel. I think there's a couple of people on the panel aren't in here. On how to plug into the Philadelphia tech ecosystem. That was definitely a question that kind of came up thematically during the mayor's Q&A fireside chat. We're going to actually tackle that a little bit more head on. So, would it be easier if I brought my laptop over? Or you good?
Yeah, I'm good. This is all, I'm learning right here, so, you know, like,
Hello everyone. Hello. How are y'all? How's everything? We're good. It's been a lot of information. I think it's been a lot of high-level information, very stacked, dense, deep information. I'm going to try to bring it down a little bit, bring it really regular, for lack of a better term. I think that a lot of the information that we received throughout the last few days, the last few hours, last few minutes, can be a bit overwhelming. It can seem like, oh man, I'm about to stay this 9 to 5. And that's it, and that's fine. But so, prior designer, this is what we'll be talking about. I'm Eric Jordan. I go by E. Jordan Ill, which is for Eric's Jordan Illustration. Went to college to be an illustrator. I kind of switched that and went into design. I design now for the entrepreneur. So logos, pitch decks, proposals, these things that we all been looking at the last couple of days. I design those and kind of making sure that the brand owner, the small business, they kind of have everything they need to look nice. So, entrepreneur. That thing hard to spell. I think you need to know like how to spell it. And meaning, know what you're getting into. Know that this is rough, it's hard, it's fun, it's easy. It's chasing your dreams. It's hard. It's hard to read. That was a bad decision. It's fine. But it's you can't see it. It looks nice on the computer though. So it can be hard to do, right? Like we're talking about thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of hours, taking the time to say I'm going to do something, understanding what your brain is going to be, the essence, what is that, going into the fear. These are scary, difficult, challenging things. But on the other hand, these things are pretty fun. Like a lot of us right now, we may not have to call out because we are our own boss. We made a decision to go into these things that can be difficult but very rewarding. It can be fun. We're learning so much. We're going to. Anybody apply anything they learned yesterday into something they did yesterday? That quick. And I think that's pretty fun. That's empowering. Like, yo, I went to this conference. It was crazy. And I done put some of that stuff into my life, whether personal or professional, instantly. And that gives you a very gratifying feeling. And to me, that's very fun. So before we get back to that, we go to this. And so I wrote a book. It's called Fire Your Designer, because maybe that's what you do. Get them out of there. Why? Because maybe they're drunk and they didn't give you what you needed, and then you have a deadline. Where's my stuff? Now you got to go in and do things like this, where you can't even see what's going on, and it's crazy. So Fire Designer, so I've been designing for myself for the last 2.5 years. I started designing for myself the top of 2015. Before that, I had a lot of corporate gigs, did a lot of fashion, I did some logos, I did some websites, I worked for Complex Media, I worked for an online e-retailer called Karmaloop, where I did some freelance work for Nike, Adidas, and so kind of ran the gamut. I was working for a boutique agency as my last job. Saw he was able to do it. It's like, man, this guy is very talented. That's cool. But you know what? I kind of want to do this myself. And so I wrote a list, and I looked at the list over and over and over again. I told myself, here's what I want to do. Here's when I want to do it. Here's how I want to do it. And I looked at it over and over and over again. I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Thought about the laws of affirmation, words of affirmation, just looking at it, positive vibrations and so on. So I hypnotized myself to do it myself. Pretty scary, but I went out and I did it, and it's awesome, and it brings me here. So I'm getting into just going from the entrepreneur to the entrepreneur. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was in my 9 to 5. I was at this boutique agency. It was cool. I had Fridays off. That was nice. It was cool. But I wanted to do it myself. I found out like I wanted to do my style. I wanted to understand what I want to give to the client, to the customer, the way I want to give it to them. I don't want to go into this guy's office. I want to be in my own office. And when you work for yourself, your office can be anywhere. We can do our work right now. One of my goals and objectives is to make sure that people can do as much work from under the cover as they possibly can. Send your invoice, file, right on the phone before you even get out of there. Arguably, you can make a logo, a website, a pitch deck in the bed, on your phone. It's all good. So when we think about this, we got to brainstorm. We have to think about what we want to do. And it's been great presentations earlier about understanding why you're doing something, or what's going to be your objective, what is your goal. So you write it down. You get a pen and paper, and you understand exactly what you're going to do. You write it down, and you type it out. But you get from your ideas from your brain onto the paper, and you're able then to review it, to really see what's making sense, see what doesn't make sense. See how you're going to benefit yourself and the people that you're going to be working with. So what you going to do? You got to figure it out. What's your solution? What's your product? Why you want to make that product? Who are you going to make that product for? Really understand it. I think that in the presentation we've been hearing, it's a lot of things that can be, they can kind of make you stay away from it. So you have to really figure out what you're going to do. Who are you going to solve your problem for? And then you got to figure out like how's it going to be different? What's going to make your thing that thing? Why do people want to get what you're selling, what you're creating, or when I get a competitor? And when you have that kind of differentiation, then you can kind of keep going and understand what you're going to do. And so I'm kind of just going from wanting to actually doing. And then I think then after you're kind of in your business and you know what you're doing, you're in the flow and your rhythm, then you go to a lot of different strategies. But I'm trying to go from I had an idea or I didn't even really know what to do to I wrote it down to it's here, it's physical, we're doing it, I delivered it. So what will your name be? You had a beautiful explanation. I take it a bit more general think about your name. How can it be different? We go into keeping it simple, right? We always hear like, well, I want to start my business, but what should my name be? What it should be about, and so on and so forth. You don't have to go crazy. Just pick something simple, and you can get it started. Now, again, it's not taking away from the importance of what that name could be. I think moving on, we can go ahead. I have another deck I have. I talk about Diddy. Now we got Diddy. We got Puff Daddy. What else we got? What else we got? What other name does he have? Sean Combs. Combs Enterprises. Well, but what we know is that he gives us an experience. He's going to Diddy Bop. He's going to dance. He's going to tell us to take a shot at Ciroc. He's going to do all these things. When we do that, he's giving us a feeling. He's giving us an experience. So we don't want to get caught up on what should it be. I don't know. I've been spending 2 months on my name. I can't figure it out. I crossed all of them out. You don't have to do that. You figure that name out. You want to get from idea to putting your product out into the world. So you do that, and then you can always come back and revise. You did that, right? Travel with us. You said it was great, but then it wasn't. And you switched it. There's no problem. And then you got that money. It's all good. So we have Kevin Gates. That man had 2 phones. Your logo, you have 2 syllables, right? We find, I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the biggest, most successful companies have 2 syllables in their name. We have Google, Apple, Netflix, Samsung, Android, Whole Foods. Maybe you do something like that. Now, all these are just springboards. What we hear, what everyone says to you, all the advice, you take what you need from it and you put it into your own world. Somebody may give you something that's great for them and it's terrible for you. So, but maybe this will help your brain get going. Again, it doesn't have to be too crazy or too complex. You can think about it and keep moving. Then you have combinations. I really enjoy how you have internet flicks is what makes Netflix. Like, oh, that's cool. There's no word like Netflix, so they have a very unique name. It works. It's 2 syllables. It goes with that ideology. Boom, keep settling. And then, you can always make mistakes. They went to Quickster. Everybody remember Quickster? You guys remember when they did that? And that's when I unsubscribed? Like, no. Right. Still, 2 syllables. Just quick, get it there. I know what to stir with the combination. So, that would be your logo, right? Or your name of your company, rather. And so then we go to websites. I'm kind of going to speed through it so you know that it's not too overwhelming. You do have to do your due diligence and study, understand your fear, your pain points, what you're going to offer, who your customer is, knowing the avatar and all that. But that can be scary. Very vital and important, but it can be scary. So when you get all the way down, like, yo, here's the name of your company, here's the logo, here's your website, and then you can kind of start really planning and get everything correct. But this is to make sure that you kind of get it done. And here are different ways you can get it done. So your website, you want to figure out, like, you're going to tell people, here's my product, here's what I'm offering to you. It's your first impression. You want to make sure it looks very nice. Again, you don't have to go crazy and make sure, like, oh, every pixel has to be perfect or they won't give me the money. Absolutely wrong. But we talk about the difference of an entrepreneur. We have people who sell drugs all the time. An entrepreneur, right? He's not really good, but they don't have a website. They get their money. They went from A to B and got it done. And so we kind of think about them that don't do what they do just that. And so you want to figure out what you're going to do. How are you going to do it? Again, are you going to sell in person? We go to the trap lord. Are you going to be in person on the street? Are you going to sell things online? How are you going to do it? Are you going to have everything on Instagram and tell people go to your PayPal? All these things are possible. So it's also to let you know the power is in your hand, right? If you want to have something big and you want to sell your product online, you don't necessarily have to sell it with your big, beautiful website. You can, and that's a plus. But you can tweet people and have, here's the link to my PayPal on Twitter. There's no excuse not to do that business. You can start your business right now on your phone. You don't need a Mac and a PC. You don't need an iPad. You can do it right now. So you don't have to be scared or you don't have to be overwhelmed like, yo, I got to get millions of dollars. I have to talk to my investors 20 times a day, which is great, how you're doing it. But you can, this is your business. You make it how you want. You design it for the result that you need, the way that you want, and then you revise your process and get it and scale it up. So with your website, you can do it yourself. This is the thing. When I wrote Fire Your Designer, so if you don't have anywhere from $50 to $500,000, you can still start your business yourself. And so with that, if you want to get your website started yourself, you have Wix, Weebly, and WordPress. You have other sites like ReadyMag, Webflow. These two, you are able to design your website or get a designer to send you their JPEGs, the PSDs, the PNGs, whatever, and you make it yourself. I did the Fire Your Designer site myself in about 2 days, no developer, I designed it. I don't have the money to pay the developer. If I did, I'm trying to keep that. So I did it myself. Then you have Squarespace. We all heard this. If you want to sell your items and you don't want to sell on Instagram because you think that's bootleg, you can sell on Shopify. BigCommerce, Big Cartel. Big Cartel is free. We've seen everybody who wants that $20 t-shirt and do it on Big Cartel is free. They have about 5 different items you can do without paying. Throw it on Big Cartel. In 2 hours, you have your business. You're kind of selling things, and then you go back and you figure out exactly what's going on. How are you going to scale it up? How are you going to get all of your money? But you don't have to be overwhelmed and scared and shook about all these different things. Here's all kinds of different options. You can even test them. Shopify has free templates you can do on that. Big Cartel as well. You can kind of test between which one do you like the most, which one is easy for you to update your products and upload your products, which one looks the best, which one does your customer like the best. Service space. So when you're doing your site, it can be a bit nerve-wracking, like, yo, I don't really know how to do this. Where do I heard of GoDaddy, but is that just URL? What is a URL? What's a TLD? Who knows, right? Okay. Get your server space, you go to GoDaddy, you can get your name, you get your space, and that's it. Or you can go to Shopify, they give you your server space, you get it done that way. You have so many different options on how to get your thing done. You don't have to be stopped. If you do start with a designer, or you have your little cousin doing your work, or your nephew, your niece, because they're great at computer and you're not, don't get stuck. Go to Google, get that name, figure it out, do it quick. You can even tell people, so I wrote a book. I'm not an author. I told people, like, yo, I wrote this book. You should get it. It's full of grammatical errors and typos, but it's going to help you do something. That was it. So, because I'm not going to let my fear of not knowing how is it ITS or IT apostrophe S, I don't know the possessive, I don't know. But listen, I tell you about service space, and you get the book. Newsletters. And so let's say you have your logo, the name of your business, you have your just a little name, your quick logo, you have a website that's kind of selling your products, telling people what you offer, how they can get it. So, selling it. Now we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, and those are all great. I've been hearing and reading that newsletters still have the highest conversion rate out of any social media platform that is available at the moment. So we've seen people always get the newsletter, you go to the party, get the newsletter because they know what time it is. You get people the newsletter, you have direct access to their attention. Another thing we've been hearing all week, the last 2 days, is you want to make sure you have that tasty content, those great headlines, and you want to have a headline that brings people in. We're so busy from personal things to our 9 to 5, trying to figure out how to do this on our own, but we don't know how to do it, sending invoices and so on. Everybody's attention is being taken away. But if you get them with that good headline, now you have their attention, and you continue to get them with great headlines and of course content, give them quality content they can really use. At that point, you have them. So you give them that more content, start solving problems and answer things for them. At that point, you tell them what you want, sell them, they'll be able to get it because you have direct access to them. If you already helped them one way, you'll continue to help them in other ways. And in turn, they'll help you by giving you some. Make it official. Can't read it. It's okay. So we're talking about incorporating, right? So you have to have differences between, are you just taking it in the PayPal, or are you going to say, my company, Inc., whatever, you give it to that. And so there are different ways you can do it. You don't have to feel like overwhelmed or like, should I trust LegalZoom? Or I don't really know what's going on. I got to talk to my tax professional. All those are great, but you have other options. You have LegalZoom, you have CMG Philly, which is here. That would be great. You have Stripe Atlas, which I use, pretty cool. You have Turkey. And a lot of these different places, you start filling out what your business is, what you're trying to do, how you'd like to do it, and then they set you up automatically. There's nothing else you have to do. You give them a fee, and then they give you a bank account. You incorporate the language you need to be, and it's all good. You want to make memories. Again, we talked about Diddy, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy. Remember what he's done, how he makes us feel, and the professionalism and quality he brings to his service, what he brings to his clients and his audience. It's important to do everything that we heard about branding, from textures to colors to typography. Why is it typed this way? Is it bold? Is it thin? Is it bold? What combinations are you using? Highly important. But before you do that, or if you're thinking, man, I can't afford him. This man, first of all, he's out of the game. He got his own app. I can't afford him. That's fine. Do it yourself, right? You want to make, you have a feeling when people do certain things. So make sure that you're thinking about the experience. You can have a nice site that's simple, a nice logo, a nice two-syllable name, what have you, that's very simple, and and get it done. But when you give into that quality, how are you speaking to them? How are you offering things? Are you on time? Are you early? Are you telling the truth? When you do these different things, people are going to remember that. They're not going to say, oh man, well, that color was off. You know, that hexadecimal didn't really pop. Like, no one's talking about that. But they're going to say they treated me so well. Then you're going to get to referrals and word up, and everything's going to come back. So if we're sitting here thinking about how I'm going to start my business, and you're worrying about the different Pantone colors, worry about how you're going to make people feel, building a quality experience. At that point, they'll tell you, yo, I know someone that can do a site for you for free. And then the blessings and the different things come to you. So you don't have to do stuff. And then celebrate. Man, you are here, this is crazy, right? You're here, you're learning, and this learning is making you tired, right? As I'm sure it is with you too. So everything you do on this road to being an entrepreneur, you have to celebrate. You have to say like, yo, I picked my name and I'm going to stick with it. Give yourself a pat on the back. I figured out how to fix and solve this problem. Give yourself a pat on the back. Not, yo, I don't have the money. I don't have the team. I don't have the resources. Number one, you always have the resources. You just have to ask and take it. They'll be right there. But tell yourself that you've done it. Take a little break, breathe, relax, and then go back in. But don't hurt yourself because, oh man, well, founder X, Y, yes, all of these things popping. How can I ever do that when I have a wife, I have kids, I have a child, or I have this business? I just do not know how to transition from where I am to where he is. Well, where he is, he's trying to go here too, but you have to start at a particular place. So be comfortable with where you are, know where you're going to go, and be happy for every step that you take to get there. Even if you get pushed back, even if you fall and you lose. It's great that you fall and you lose because then you know where you're going to go. But if you don't even jump to fall, then you'll be living a life of regret, and we don't want that at all. So, keep going, man. One of my favorite ad-libs from Jay-Z on that "What we do is wrong." You don't know that? Keep going. Anyway, he's like, yo, keep going. You have to, right? Again, you can fall, you can lose, you can fail. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose friends. You may lose your significant other. You may lose self-esteem. All these things are going to happen in this road to being an entrepreneur. It is very difficult. It's truly rewarding, very difficult, but you cannot stop. If this is something you really want to do, especially if you want to see a profit, if you want to see a good life or happiness, whatever you want from it, you have to keep going. Who here is an entrepreneur already? Who here had to keep going? Same hand. You can't stop. This thing is hard. It's difficult. And you have tons of experiences. So I always like to talk about, I'll go off this. I like to talk about Instagram, right? Everybody's talking about, oh, I'm on vacation, check me out, a selfie. Like, oh, word. No, not at all. Because you may be on that vacation having a selfie, but then we talk about what it took for you to get to that vacation. That you had to forego when everyone else was on vacation. While you were working on double shifts. When your 9 to 5 stopped, and so your 5 to 9 started. When you go from 9 to 5 and go to this entrepreneurial journey, you go from 9 to 5 to 24/7. It doesn't stop. You may have trouble sleeping. You're going to have trouble getting the money, talking to your proper people, finding the proper person. Who are they? But if you keep going, you're going to find them. And you give people quality experience without overthinking or being scared of where you're going to get into. You'll get it. That's it. So I got this book, Inspiring Designer. InspiringDesigner.co. I talk about all these things, how to do it. And that's really it. Thank you. Any questions? Can we go?
I have a question. Like I said, keep going. What was one of the biggest things you had to overcome with your business?
My business, overcoming, leaving a job where the money was there every week, having a family, and having to provide for the family, and telling them, like, I just had a baby. Cool, I'm not going to have this job though, right? And so, leaving the security of a check that's coming all the time, and knowing that my skill set and the time and preparation I put into that skill set will give me what I need to make sure that I can provide for myself, for my family, both on a creative level and of course financially as well. So knowing that you can do it, even when others, see the thing is, others may tell you that you're wrong, this is crazy. That's oftentimes when you know you're right and when they tell you you're crazy. And so it didn't really make, if you look at it, it didn't make sense for me to leave my job when I just had a baby in New York. How is this going to go down? I never was an entrepreneur. I don't come from an entrepreneurial background, nor is my family that way. But I decided I know that I can do exactly what I need to do, the way in which I want to do it, and I was giving it gaining financially to be able to pay for me to continue to learn what I need to learn to keep going. And so that was a bit difficult, but it went down, and it definitely worked.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We're now going to shuffle you back over to the other side. We're going to have a really awesome panel that is featuring Comcast and also some local entrepreneurs about how to plug into the tech ecosystem in Philadelphia. And then after that, we'll have the last segment of Office Hours and 2 more talks in here featuring Andre, who is probably doing a video interview right now, and Kevin, who's going to do the sales guide for startups. So, first panel, over here.
If you guys had a problem with my link, let me know and I can hook you up. Because that's happened.
Thanks for the work.
Okay. BB Founders. Yeah, the hashtag is. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, totally. It just makes me think. Sorry.
I love it. What time are you on? Okay, that sounds great. I am in change management, so I really help in business and organization and transition to things. So it'll be great to meet you. Oh, yeah. Oh, excellent. It'll be great for us to connect.
I'm like, first of all,
I'll take you as well.
he's actually an engineer. You want me to draw anything, you will fail. Very, very bad. Yeah. So,
All right, thank you, sir.
So,
I am not. I'm in there. I don't have to wait until
I suspect that things happen because everybody thinks I'm really so actually, in this, you ask like this, everybody's asking that they're using now. And they're using anybody has to do it until they ask for it.
I get a little juiced up sometimes, that's all. You have to be a
Whatever they said. So,
Alright, everybody. Migrate.
No worries. I got 5 minutes. I got 5 seconds. You see it. And actually, it's all feel anyway. So, you need to be able to, the images need to feel like exactly 175.
Huh? Oh, no. That's all part of it.
Yes. Yeah. You gotta create like a fair market value. And say, this much money, this money, this much.
and a builder, and really someone that you guys all here can learn from, and how she did it. So, as Anita mentioned, I'm Tony Williams with Comcast NBC Universal, and I get to spend most of my time sort of sitting at the intersection of policy and politics and technology. And so most of the time that's conversations with politicians who talk a lot about tech, but don't actually know what that means or how do you build that really inclusive ecosystem. And so I had the opportunity here when Anita reached out to me to pull together 3 people who I thought were really doing it right in Philadelphia when I was reading about them and talking to them. And so I'm going to jump right into it and really want to start off the conversation by asking each of you guys to describe a little bit about what the state of Philadelphia's tech ecosystem looks like today and where do you see it going?
So I should say, compared to 7 years ago, this is beautiful. And by that I should preface, about 7 years ago, me and Christopher Wink and Brian James Kirk kind of made a handshake deal, and one of the early years of Philly Tech Week. And I designed my own event around like trying to include a more diverse group of people in tech. So I think in the first year I got some money from Body and Water, and then I did an event around music technology with a producer named RJD2. In the second year I talked Heineken and gave me some money, and I did the same thing. Questlove and a radio station here in town. And back then, it was like a really heavy lift, you know, because everybody's using technologies. I know all kinds of brothers in music who knew how to talk about Pro Tools or Serato, but when I asked them to kind of bring that knowledge into like the future of their business models, it was like, why do I need to know that? So just seeing in like 5 to 7 years, like how many more people are engaged in the tech scene, or how many people are passionate about it, or how many people are trying to do something, is really positive to see. But you know, on the other side, I think we have a tremendous amount of work to do in a city that has 26% poverty, has broken schools, has no pipeline into like the building trades, or you know, if you live in walking distance to Drexel, which has a $700 million endowment, or Penn, that has a $10.5 billion endowment, there is no pipeline to get into this building if you can see it. So I could talk about the positive things, but I think as a city, we haven't even gotten started.
Turn on the mic.
Hello, can you hear me now? Alright, now I'm going to tell you all I'm 26 again. I'll preface this by saying that I'm pretty new to the scene too, so I can talk a little bit about what it's like now and where we hope it goes, but I think Taib has been one of the builders from that we think that's kind of paved the way for a lot of us to be doing the work we're doing right now, and so the perspective of those years, I think he has a lot of better sense of how it's come to be what it is. I get to be one of the young people that's taken advantage of how far we have come in the last 10 years to create both my career, my friend's career, and everyone else in the community that we've been so fortunate to help. I think Philadelphia is an incredible tipping point. It's tipping kind of like slow, and like one day it's just kind of like, how they say, like, what is it? It's like takes 10 years to break over and success. One of those. Like, we're in like the 9th year, maybe. Like, I feel like we're moving towards. We'll all look back and say, I can't believe we were part of this a few years ago because look how far we've come. And I think we're very close to that point now. Only in the last 4 years that I've been involved, I've seen the programs that we've had through Philly Startup Leaders go from, we're recruiting people and convincing them this is a good idea, to we need to figure out what our CAP numbers are, and we need to eventually open a second program for things. So there are people in the city that being part of the startup entrepreneurship community is much more common, whether that's a Comcast that's much more involved, or all the lawyers in the city and the accountants and all the service providers, or the universities who all now have like entrepreneurship clubs and entrepreneurship degrees that you can, like when I was at Temple 5 years ago, I figured out later that there was an entrepreneurship major, but it wasn't something that was advertised. Drexel hadn't opened its entrepreneurship school, so the rest of the city, there's kind of this groundswell of all the resources
how close to home this ever. I think I've been in Philly for about 6 years now, and I first came here working for the city as an urban planner, and I got really involved in the civic hacking scene. I have seen a ton of things change just over the past 6 years. The tech community here is super active, very friendly, very welcoming. But the thing that really bothers me is that every recruiting event that we have tabled at through our company, we are known for diversity, and we get lines of people waiting 20 minutes just to come up and say, I'm trying to break into tech. I don't have a woman on my team. I don't have a person of color on my team. I don't have another LGBTQ person on my team. And that's one of the benefits that I have being multiracial, multi-ethnic, a woman, and being a lesbian, is that people come to me and can connect with me on some level. And it's really been interesting to hear so many people say that they're having trouble feeling comfort in their workplace, because, I mean, I'm sure, the people that you guys work with, a lot of the companies in the tech scene do try to invite diversity, but it's just not where it needs to be yet. That's one thing that I think is still kind of growing.
So, Taim, I think you had a comment?
Yeah, so when companies talk about their attempts at diversity, it always exhausts me because they fail. Like every year, there's statistics that come out in like December, January, and then like every February, you'll see an initiative coming out from Intel, Microsoft, Apple, about how they're going to commit $1 million, $50 million, $100 million to diversity, and you don't hear about that program again. And then somehow, the same thing happens the following February. So if I were to speak to that to my local tech scene, I get exhausted when, frankly, white people ask me to come out and talk about diversity, because we've been carrying the bale to make like inclusion an issue since the country's inception. And I never go into white rooms where people are talking about the importance of diversity unless it's a bullet point that they're trying to give to me. So there's something almost exhausting or dehumanizing to always ask people of color, marginalized communities to do the work of diversity. It has to be a mandate that is company-wide. So you just can't like do a dinner and bring every diverse person of color from a tech company to an annual event, whether it's with Comcast or whether it's with the city or whether it's for a council person. Like it has to be for the greater, mainstream wide world that this is important, because we're always working on this.
Yeah, so I think one of the themes that I picked up in all of your comments was that when you talk about the Philadelphia tech ecosystem, you're talking of, one, it's sort of in a nascent stage, but then two, that you're really talking about something that looks and sort of exists, if you would, in Center City. So it doesn't touch all the neighborhoods. It doesn't reach down into some of our lower income populations. It doesn't leverage, if you would, the diversity of thought and ideas, really that makes Philadelphia special, right? You think about, you mentioned Questlove earlier, right? Obviously West Philadelphia now looks a little bit different from when he was coming up in it, but that's where you had a lot of the creativity of the music and the art coming out of our city. And so,
actually, this space right here was a black neighborhood. It was part of the Black Bottom. Like this used to be black row homes, and then during the Bacon administration, Ed Bacon, during the Dilworth administration, this was gifted to the University of Pennsylvania through urban renewal, and then it sat empty for 10 years before it was given to private developers. I'm being tangential, but we're constantly being displaced. And in a city like Philadelphia, while the downtown area is rapidly changing, I think Drexel and Penn have a plan to extend Center City to 45th Street, which is 10 blocks beyond us. Those other parts of the city, those other neighborhoods that are ex-Center City, are not even in the discussion, frankly.
So what I want to go to then is how do we solve that, right? How do we start to attack that problem? Because we've all talked a little bit about some of the resources that were already out there, right? Liz herself has built a company. It's, you know, she's got almost 20 people working for her. She's growing. How do we start to reach out into some of those and change, if you would, that narrative? You know, and what is it that, you know, some of our largest institutions here, the Penns, the Drexel, Comcast, what should they be doing?
I would totally agree with what you said earlier about constantly being invited and being exhausted about talking about diversity. Same thing about being a woman in tech. I think that more of these institutions that are having these events need to invite people of color, women in tech, to come and talk about their specialization and what they're doing in the community, rather than always put a spotlight on us for being diverse. I think it's the most frustrating thing. We actually started an initiative in our office called WOW, Women of Web Junto, because more than half our team are women. And we started talking about what are the problems with the events that we've been showcased at. Like, what are the things that are really bothering us as women in tech? And the reason that we're most frustrated is because we get contacted to come talk about being a woman in tech and what the struggles are being a woman in tech. We are kick-ass developers, designers, ideators. Like, why do you care so much about hearing about our struggle? Why don't you want to help us get past that struggle and invite us to talk about what we do the best, which is be ourselves and use the skills that we have?
Shoot, I think you had asked like how to reach those spaces.
Yeah, how do we start that? Because it's not going to be an over-the-night process.
Well, I think this kind of ties to like how you can get involved in the tech scene locally. So I think this is my 3rd year on the board of Apps and Maps at Temple. So it's a program that teaches 120 kids in North Philadelphia tech-focused ideas and careers or building their own apps. And that has a very influential board of people who are tech founders. That not only gave me insights to how heavy the lift is in education and tech in our communities, but it also gave me some valuable relationships with people that I wouldn't have imagined that would be my entry to work with them. So there's programs like Coded by Kids, which Sylvester Mobley is the founder of. I think if people from the for-profit community could look at how they could lend their expertise or their resources or their insight into some of our broken communities, it's not just something that has like a triple bottom line return. It's a relationship building, it's something that will actually give you some positivity in your own life, but it's also training the next generation of potential people that you could be hiring into your pipeline. Whether through the Institute of Hip Hop Entrepreneurship, which my partner and I founded, or Pipeline, or I think it's a couple one people that are old enough to remember. I used to own a magazine called 215. From every one of my ventures, I've had people that I have a continuous feedback loop of either hiring them or them coming to us for resources or sending other potential employees to us. So it's upon us as a community, as people who've been traditionally marginalized, to do the heavy work in communities. And we can't always put it on institutions or foundations or think that people from outside the community are going to really work in solidarity and not come with a missionary perspective, which a lot of times that's just people doing stuff to make themselves feel better, not necessarily trying to make transformative change.
So I want to bring Yuval into this conversation a little bit, because Yuval, you're building a community with Philly Startup Leaders. How have you gone about that, and how do you go about making sure that it's an inclusive community, one that brings in, I mean, obviously you're a woman, but also people of color, low-income folks, people who are, if you would, native to Philadelphia and didn't just come here to go to Temple or Drexel or UPenn, but really the heart and soul of the city.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the story of how I got involved with Philly Startup Leaders is probably interesting for another day. I'm happy to talk about that for a little bit. I don't think that that's like a lesson for everyone. If you're trying to build a tech company, like this was a nonprofit, and so one of the biggest opportunities that I got because of that is volunteer. You could knock on Liz's door and say, "Can I volunteer for WebGen?" It would be a little bit like, sure. She'd be maybe a little surprised to hear that, and would probably somehow figure out a way to make it work because it's Liz, but like it might be illegal because it's a for-profit company. So I think tapping into the nonprofits of the community and volunteering with them is the biggest way. It was my uphill slope into being recognized as a leader in the tech community. So I graduated from Temple University in 2013, majored in strategic communications, knew nothing about tech except for one guy named Steve Jobs who built Apple in his garage, and you guys know him. And he is the only thing I was like, oh, people are building startups like Steve Jobs. So to me, it seemed like way unattainable. You had to know how to code, you had to be in Silicon Valley, you had to have a lot of money. I don't have any of those things. I paid for college on my own. My parents are teachers who teach like elementary school, so that wasn't going to be helpful in that sense. And I didn't know how to do anything tech related. I decided to go into consulting, which I thought was like the mecca of like first. Like, oh, you graduate, you go to consulting because that's what you do when you're really smart. But I was like banging my head against a cubicle by day 4. Called my dad, was like, Dad, I'm quitting. And he was like, no, because you don't have the privilege to quit. Because you have to pay your loans off in 2 weeks, and I can't pay your rent, so you're going to figure it out. Stayed in consulting for 8 months, but spent that, and whatever job you have now that pays you, like, do not leave that job until you have another one, unless you have a plan for how to get whatever you need. Unless you get to a roadblock and you're like, all I can do right now is spend more time on this, and then you have to figure it out, because at the end of the day, we have some responsibilities in our life, and they include paying off things that we spend money on, taking care of people we take care of, and feeding ourselves and taking care of ourselves. So I had to figure out how to do all those things while figuring out what I wanted to do next. And whatever seat you're in right now, my biggest advice is don't leave the thing that's paying you, because it's going to make you a less stable human to be able to build whatever you want to build next, right? All of a sudden you'll be owing more people money, or you'll be tapping into more of your savings, or you won't be able to make the money that you need to spend on like that class you want to take or that event you want to go to. So I made sure to stay at my job, and then what I did was I just volunteered my time. So I met 84 people for coffee over 3 months, which is a lot of caffeine. I don't do caffeine anymore because that was a lot. But what happened was through that, I built a network. I was talking to Keenan before. Keenan went for America, and we like talk about recent grads and how they find their place often, because she's helping them do that in Philly. And I was talking to her, and I was like, I realized that a lot of people have opportunity, right? And you say like, oh, how much was it luck and how much of it was hard work, right? Sorry. A lot of people think that building a company, like it's a lot of luck, right? So, oh, how much of it was luck and how much of it was hard work? And I was just listening to the story of Stonyfield Yogurt, their company, and he was like, oh, so much luck. It's like, well, luck comes in the intersection of opportunity and timing. If you don't have a lot of opportunity, you got to go make opportunity for yourself so that the timing intersects with the opportunity at a certain point, right? So, sorry, follow me on this tangent for a little bit. So I was like, well, I don't know people in the tech community. I don't know people in the business community, and this is what I want to do. So I had to create the opportunity for myself. So I went and every person I met with, I was like, hey, Joe, thanks for meeting. 3 people I can meet maybe that you can introduce me to, and all of a sudden I'm one of the youngest people in Philly, like a young person in Philly with one of the biggest networks. Why? Because not any of the people my parents know, not any of the people like Temple Alumni Network, although that's been helpful along the way, but because I went and I had coffee meeting after coffee meeting after coffee meeting. And I met those people because the last person I met said was willing to introduce them to me. And then I just volunteered their time, and I volunteered my time and I helped those people. So Philly Startup Leaders, like, what do you guys need? Oh, you need someone to sign someone in at the next event. Cool, I'm there. I'm not better than any volunteer role you need, because this is what needs to get done for this organization to succeed. So I volunteered and signed people in, ordered catering, booked a venue. Next thing I know, one board member's family was, his mom passed away, one was moving to New York, one's startup started getting more successful. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm right here. I got you. Like, I can help. And that's when I started being one of the core volunteers. And we got to the point where we were working so many hours, we needed someone full time. I was like there, because I had been there for 2 years, not getting paid, but I had built my network, built my relationships and my skills, and at the same time met a lot of entrepreneurs that I could work with while I got to the point where I could work for Philly Startup Leaders full time. January, in a sense, except like I'm still trying to make sure our employees get paid in January. Like it's not like we're floating on piles of money here, but success in the sense where like I'm able to work full time now with a job that I wanted. It's a nonprofit, so I could volunteer for 2 years, and they needed volunteers, but there's plenty of nonprofits for y'all to volunteer with in Philly that not only need your help, but that you can learn from a lot, right? And all of us volunteer with them, and we can help you figure out the next one. The other thing is find network nodes like the three of us who can sit down with you. Like Liz's reaction to this conference was, how come I wasn't invited to speak? Because she expects to be a resource to people like you. She expects when she sees Black and brown founders, why isn't Liz a mentor there? And that's in her mindset. No one put that in her head, right? So she's established herself as someone who wants to be helpful, and she's surprised when she's not even not asked for help, right? So tap into people like us because our job is to be helpful to you, and we're here for that. So if anyone feels like they need the first coffee day to jumpstart them on this meeting lots of people and finding a spot for yourself, like let me be the first one, and I'm sure I'll volunteer this panel or the rest of the speakers that were here at this event because that's why they think they want to be helpful.
So I appreciate that, but I also don't want to lose track of the original question, which is how do you make sure that in that community that you're building, that there is diversity, inclusion, and that different types of people are included in the Philly startup community?
Yeah. So I'll tell you about one event that we have that's coming up that is a dinner, and the mayor will be there, and Comcast will be there.
Hell no.
Yeah, and Taib was there last year to lead one of the table
Please
conferences.
don't ask me to come back.
And your co-founders are coming back. So your team's
Because I want to talk about that, because that event is exactly what I'm talking about. Because that.
Can I tell them about the event before you start putting it down?
I don't want to put it down. I want to tell you about my perception of experience. But go on.
Well, I just think it's important to tell people. So the event is an event called Diversity Dinner. It's coming up in 2 weeks, and what we've realized is that there is a gap between the fact that people realize that diversity is important, and then being actually able to implement, like create diverse teams, right? So it's like, yes, I know this is important, but what do I do about it to the point where my team is diverse, right? So I think everyone in Philly, the world may be a little bit behind Philly's understand. I think, we have a pretty, the community in general has talked about diversity a lot in this kind of way. There's a panel here and there's a lot of people watching. So we want to take it to dinner conversations. So we're having about 15 to 20 roundtable conversations led by different leaders of the community that are passionate about diversity. We're actually going to keep it's an open sourced, we're collecting everyone's answers to how to make this happen, putting them all in an ebook, and then we're going to have an ebook that where everyone has resources they can look at if they're struggling to figure out either you're someone who wants to get into the community or you're someone who wants to be more inclusive in the way they're building their team. A book where we're going to try to compile all the answers of everyone that came to the event. So that's the goal of the event. Go ahead.
So my earlier comment was that when you gather a bunch of marginalized people to talk about diversity, there's something that is exhausting, a bit dehumanizing about that. And my problem with the event last year is that we had, we must have been like 350, 400 people in a gymnasium. We were stuck at tables. The mayor spoke, 2 council people spoke. You had news cameras there, and there were so many people talking about the positive things that happened in the Philadelphia community. We only had like 15 minutes to actually talk to the people at the dinner, and I basically felt like I was on the menu, and I think most of the times at diversity discussions and dinners, I feel like I'm on the menu. And then that was a part of the Founders Factory, correct?
No.
It wasn't?
Last year.
Yes.
Last year was part of it.
So then there was a larger event with the larger tech community the following day, and none of the people of color who were at the dinner, who were the leaders of the community, were invited to the Founders Factory the next day.
Well, I just want to touch on that as well, because a few weeks ago I had run into Yvonne, and I wanted to express how I felt, and some of the ways are very similar to you as well. But what I do appreciate so much is that you all in the team that are organizing do want to hear feedback, do want to listen, are trying to do better. You know, like, you can't do everything perfect. It takes time. I do think that I had the same stress. I felt the same way. I expressed a lot of the same feelings, and I still have a little bit of nervousness.
I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer up in here. But no, okay. So this isn't like something that is passive. My whole life has been about carrying this veil, right? So it's not about people's feelings. Do you know what I mean? Like, Black and brown people have been marginalized out of so many industries within my lifetime and since the inception of this country. It is not about how people feel. It is not about discussions. It's about transformative change. We need a Marshall Plan. We need a New Deal. Like, I can look out this window and I can see kids who are experiencing like marginalized education. I'm not attacking you. I'm talking about my life.
So all right, so I want to switch off from the dinner, right? Because I think one, like made a really important point here in terms of it's about the outcomes, right? It's about what is it that we can actually do to transform this and actually get people in the door. And you know, events obviously are can be part of that conversation. So we're not like we're gonna leave it alone. We're not gonna like beat this one to death here. So I actually want to switch over because, you know, one of the ways that you break in and that you actually create and you change that is you become owners, you become founders of your own spaces, right, Ty? You've done that from 215 to today.
I say one more.
Hold on a second. No. We're gonna go. I want to go over to Liz here because Liz is a founder as well and has created her own company. She's talking about the fact that 50% of her workforce is women. I want to talk a little bit about one, that experience of going from, you know, breaking out on your own when you went from urban planning into the tech space to then creating your own company. What was that experience like for these founders who are now about to experience that? And then was it a conscious decision as you then were recruiting and hiring your staff to then start to, or how did you approach that?
That's a good question. It wasn't actually a conscious decision at all. It was just natural. And like I said, we get a lot of different people that come to us because we started with a diverse team off the bat. Like our first interns were all international students from different countries. And so, you know, I always say we were a reflection of who we wanted to be from the start. We maintain diversity through the stuff that we do in the community, but when I first started the company, it was more so that I wanted to have an impact. And, you know, obviously with an urban planning background, you're like, things are wicked problems. It takes a long time to break into the feelings that we have personally and that the community has and the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis personally. And I couldn't find a job. So I have 2 master's degrees, and I went and I interviewed in the tech community here, and I wasn't given an opportunity. So listening to my father's words of wisdom, I realized that I needed to go and do something on my own and create an environment that was something that was a reflection of who I am inside and how I view the world. I think a team is nothing without diversity. We don't do it on purpose. We don't do it because we think that it's something that looks good to other people. We do it because it's just the makeup of our team, and it just ends up being that way. I think that everybody always asks me that question, and I think they expect me to have some grand plan to how we bring diverse people in. We just are a reflection of who we want to be, so more diversity comes directly to us. I can't teach somebody how to be diverse. Like I said earlier, me being a multi-racial, multi-ethnic person, I think it's just a little bit easier because people can relate to me on different levels. You know, like I don't go out and look for that. They come and look for it themselves. In the community out here, like there are plenty of talented people of color and women and LGBT people that are looking to break into the tech community, but people won't give them a damn opportunity.
Hallelujah. I mean, I see it every day. I mean, I appreciate that because I spend a lot of time on both coasts, and one of the things that you always hear is we just can't find people of color, and I'm like, I just gotta look around. Like I see a ton of them, and they love it. Right, exactly. And so I think part of it is switching up that conversation, and in that spirit, and also in the spirit of how do we do better. So, you know, we recently see things. We see Drexel Ventures, we see UPenn's efforts, we see Comcast. Right, we have our entrepreneurial engagement team. We're just talking about. We're going to open up Lyft Labs. So I want to ask maybe a little bit dangerous question. Be kind of nice to me here, Taib. Like, what? What is it that
Wait,
what is it that you want these? What do you want to see in these spaces?
Transformative change. I want to see the demography of this country be reflected in every board and every executive suite. You know what I mean? From the lowest position to the highest position, I think most of what we operate in the United States is around myths of meritocracy. So when you spend time in Silicon Valley, people really believe that they're there because they're special, not because they knew somebody or they got an angel round from their cousin and their uncle, and then the guy, they actually, got drunk with it and actually told them there was an open position at the start. None of us ever might hear of. They got, all this money to bring a product to market that's not going to make any transformative change in our communities. It's like, it's a circle. And whenever I spend time in the tech community of the West Coast, or particularly San Francisco, it's exhausting because you're talking to somebody who actually believes that they're there for meritocracy and not because of intrinsic bias or their privilege. So the kind of change that I desire, frankly, is not going to come from making people feel better. We gotta hold everyone's feet to the fire, whether it's the mayor, whether it's your city council person, whether it's your state representative, any place that you spend money. There used to be a thing they said in Philadelphia in the late 60s. It was called selective patronage. About 400 ministers came up with this program. And they basically told everyone in their congregation, you don't spend money where you can't work. So if you take that thinking into who your proprietors are, or who you hire out, or who you subcontract, if you don't have any diversity in your team, then you're uninviting your relationship with me, business or personal.
Yes.
So I want to go down the line here with the same question of sort of, as we see these different programs, what is it that you are looking for from them? How do those programs actually create this transformative change that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this question now, but I just wanted to say that I think for your first question that you asked, where are we as a city and where can we go? I think we're really, you guys know the term Negadelphia, right? Have you ever heard of it? It's a term people say, Negadelphia is like you're negative about Philadelphia all the time. It's like you're constantly saying things that are generally not positive. So I feel like I'm not black, I'm not brown, I'm not a minority or an underrepresented community in that sense. English is my second language. I am an immigrant, and I am a woman. Just interesting things to share, but that doesn't matter because right now in this conversation, I feel really uncomfortable because this is really difficult.
I feel comfortable when I walk out of my house in Rittenhouse Square every day.
Let me speak and don't interrupt.
No,
please, let me speak and don't interrupt because it's really unfair.
You're white explaining me.
See, that's why I feel uncomfortable here. Because seriously, it's actually moving me to tears because of what you're speaking. And it's really hard.
Okay, so I'm talking about issues and you're taking this personal. I'm talking about issues that affect all of us as a city, as a nation, as a country. And I apologize if you feel like you need to cry, but the types of uncomfortableness that you feel, most of us feel when we go into Comcast, when we go into City Hall, when we go to the campus, and I apologize if you feel like you need to cry. And I'm not trying to be the enemy. I see you as an ally. But the issues I'm talking about don't have anything to do with yours.
The issues you're talking about don't have to do with my feelings, period. I agree. Full stop. Okay? Now, the way you spoke about the dinner that I organized and the organization that I'm building does have to do with my feelings. I'm sorry that I'm a person who gets, I take it really personally that, I'm trying so hard, and what I was going to say was being not a person of color, trying to be helpful and trying to be inclusive, working every day to try to make this community stronger. It's really, and the reason that diversity dinner is rooted in what it is, and believe me, ask Liz, I'm what she said, I'm trying so hard to make it not what it seems to be coming off as right now, and that's what we had a one-on-one phone call to talk about it before we got to the point where we couldn't change things. I'd love to hear your opinion, but it's really difficult. This is a really sitting, like, I want to be here, and I want to be a resource to every person in this room, 100%. The people who have already resourced in this room can hopefully attest to that. I want to be helpful. It is extremely difficult walking into a room where you're really one of the only white people and feeling like I'm walking on such thin ice because anything I say or anything that I plan to be helpful, the response is that I don't get it. And so what I'm asking you guys.
Okay, so I didn't say you didn't get it. You sound that you get it.
Thank you. What I'm asking for you is, if you see something in this community, I feel very responsible. Like the founders who are building the company, who I talk to every day, all the resources that either we helped create or we support now. If you see someone who is not treating you fairly, or if you don't feel like you are getting the opportunity, or your voice isn't heard, or you wish that there was a resource that doesn't exist, I spend my life, and this is my work, but it's also my passion, creating these bridges to make it possible. So, yes, there's a lot of negadelphia, a lot of negative everything we don't do, but we're really doing a lot, and we're hoping to do better every day. So if you see something, and you feel like it's not the right thing, I have office hours, I have before work, after work, I'm available to talk about it, but you've got to raise your voice and come to us in a positive, helpful manner, and tell us what we need to do in the future, and not what we didn't do in the past, because that's what we need, and we're going to move this forward. If we're all going to do this together, it's a diverse city of every perspective's involved, and we want your perspective, but stand up and volunteer and show up and ask to be on our board and be a member of whatever committee and planning event and help us. We don't know, and we want to be solution oriented, okay? So again, it's a really uncomfortable being here. I hate being a young woman that cries in front of people. Believe me, if you're a woman you know, really if you're anyone you know, and I do feel often I'm the only woman in the room, but feeling this way right now, that's my only ask. Please look for solutions and be part of our team and help it make it happen. Sorry.
I just want to say that just, I know that I know you're trying, and I did say a lot of the same things to you about the event, and I think a lot of people do feel that way, but I will say that the points that you're touching on and the way that you feel is, again, how a lot of people in this room feel often. So it is, in a way, good for you to have the experience of feeling like the odd man out, because you know what is, maybe it's only one time, but, think about that and how that feels to us all the time, to always be the odd man out, and use that as a learning opportunity. But also from the other side of being a person of color, understand that it is also difficult being an outsider trying to help, because you don't understand the issues. It's very difficult, but you do want to be helpful. Me going to an urban planning program where I was only one of like 3 Black people in my program, it was very frustrating, because it was a lot of white people wanting to go out and help communities of color, but they don't know what it's like to grow up in that situation. It doesn't mean that what you're trying to do isn't genuine and from your heart. It just, you gotta realize what you don't know.
All right, so let's open up to some questions from the audience here. All right, so we're gonna start. The lady in the red, I think, had her hand up.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay. Do I have a mic? No. I can come up and get one. Hi, I am Lolita Walker. I am the founder of Walker & Walker Enterprises. How are you? I'm a change management consultant. But the reason that I'm here today, specifically, I was extremely uncomfortable with the way that the dinner conversation ended. And what I want to do is talk about right here on the panel. When you guys were talking about the dinner, I think we all remember that. So I was not at the dinner. I'm actually from Maryland. But the reason I want to talk about it is because what I was extremely disappointed with was how we allowed it to end, right? We didn't allow it to end with any actions. And the reason why we are here as Black and Brown founders are to make sure that our messages are getting out and that we are going to thrive in everything that we do. The way we thrive in everything that we do, in my estimation, is to make sure that we not only talk about what didn't happen right, but also give action items so that she can leave knowing what she needs to do differently, okay? So what I will say is that I wasn't the moderator, but what I would encourage us to do in the future is to make sure that as we talk about a topic, that we just round it out to make sure that then it's going to work on our behalf. So I did hear a couple of things inside of what didn't work well that you should take away, right? One of them was don't cram everybody together, right? Another thing that I think I heard, I wasn't at the dinner, was that you give the time allotted for the people that are there and the leaders. No problem, I'm just telling you what I heard as action items. I don't want to debate it, I wasn't there, I live in Maryland, right? And the last thing that I think I heard is that we want to make sure the same leaders that you're calling leaders are going to then be able to go to the next forums in order to still talk about their craft. So those are the things that at least I took away that I think you should do differently. The other thing that I wanted to address, Taib, right? I agree with a lot of what you said, but it's in the how. And I don't know you, I haven't had the wonderful opportunity to meet you, but as a woman, what I will say is like the stretching, the faces, all of that means something. And we all see it, and unfortunately, I haven't had the wonderful opportunity to meet each of you all. But if I was impressionable, what I can take away is that I might not want to work with some people that were on the stage because you being the strong leader that you are and me believing in some things that you're saying, I say this to myself as well, but I want to make sure that as a woman, I'm coming from a woman's perspective, that I don't have a man doing that to me because I don't take kindly to that, right? I am good at my craft. I am good at what I do. And what's not okay is if I feel disrespected as a result of what I'm trying to do is not being taken the right way or I'm not being taken seriously. So I just want to encourage us to make sure that in everything we say and everything we do, there is somebody that is looking at us, okay? We are accountable, we are committed, and we are here for a purpose, okay? And I felt disrespected. I was standing up, I couldn't wait to get to a mic. And I just want to just encourage us to continue to encourage each other. And when we moderate, our roles are really to make sure that we bring it home. I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a reason, and I got to drive back home. And let me tell you something, too. Listen, I'm sorry. I want to tell you that you are strong. Keep it that way. You know your craft and do it. Take what we're saying to you and improve. Okay?
I'm going to pass the mic, but I do just want to say one quick thing. Because I was sitting in the back listening and like, should I jump up there or not? But I felt like I really just needed to let it happen and let you guys have your authentic experiences and truth play out up there. I do want to say to you all, with everybody listening, that we really appreciate having you here and we appreciate your perspective. And I don't think that you need to apologize for that. But I do hope that alongside expressing what it is that you know and your experience, that you are also listening to the experiences of the people in the room.
I want to start with positivity, and I know that it's really difficult for all of us to be in this room right now. The first thing, I don't live in Philadelphia, it's really important. When you say, is it Negadelphia, in a room full of, get out, in a room full of brown people, which associates right away to me, to nigger. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. Number one. And number two, you're feeling an emotion, you being the only one in the room. What causes change is being uncomfortable. What causes change is being uncomfortable and doing something about it. So I don't have any negativity, but as he, to some people in the audience, is mansplaining, you're also white-splaining. Because with your body mannerisms and his is like, and it's a trained thing. And so, no, please, because I mean you no negativity. I come with you with nothing but the power of love, persuasion, and continuance. So as you want to be heard, we all, as you're the only one, so many of us here are always the only one. I own a co-working space in Portland, one of the whitest cities, and 98% white men when I bought it. Someone thought I was the housekeeper. Okay? Now, because you have to go get change, you can't wait for it to come to you. Now it's 30% women and 26% POC. Go get the change. Don't wait for it.
agree that transformative change is what we need to be moving towards. But transformative change is the goal. So what are the tactics that we can take to move us in that direction?
I think it's just reiterate, if we're talking about diversity or diversifying the tech community, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, like it has to be a mandate throughout the company or the institution and not just for the POC portion of the company or of the community. And something else I just wanted to say earlier, I think when you said minority, because in our program at the Institute of Hip Hop Entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about how to position yourself from a space of power. And I always get frustrated when I'm in the city of Philadelphia, which in my lifetime at one point I think was as high as 60% African American, and now it might be 52% African American. But people would always describe that I'm a minority, but within the city, I'm actually not a minority. Within the constructs of the world, if you look at the 3 most populous countries, none of them are white countries. The concept of us being a minority is something about constructs of colonialism, Western power. So for me personally, I never describe myself as a minority, or I never describe myself as a minority because I think there is something disempowering in that description. I know some people don't understand it, but for me, I'm not a minority, I'm a person of color.
What was the question again? Was it about the tactics? Without bringing it up again, I think that's what so I don't know the answer, right? And I think a lot of people are stuck with that, right? They don't know the answer, they care, they don't know what to do about it, but they want to get there. And that really is why we created the dinner. And we're creating a Google Doc where everyone can share their thoughts and combining and compiling it. What I'm happy to do is share that with everyone who attended this conference too. If they want to, I mean, it's open to everyone to use, but I'll make sure it directly gets to this team and people who are here, registered and partners in this. So right now for me, I am listening and I am out there asking people, what can we do better and what has worked for other teams? Like asking Liz, like what worked that we can kind of look for a way. For me, it's about replicating to get to all the startups in the community and giving them the resources. So I guess that's a long way to say I don't know the answer, but I'm searching for it. And we're at this event that we're having. We're compiling the resources all in one place so that everyone doesn't have to do all the searching. What we're doing, and we can pass that on to everyone who has the questions about it. From both sides of the table, from people hiring and people looking for to join teams.
I strongly feel that if you want transformation, you got to make it for yourself. I don't wait for other people to make these changes for me. I have literally hustled every single day for years trying to get to where I'm at. If you want to see real transformation, if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you're of any group that doesn't feel that you're getting what you deserve from the skills that you have, you should really just it's a lot to put that on your chest to go out and be that person, and not everybody is the person to go out and be a showcase for what you'd like to see. But if you are, you owe that to yourself, to at least go out and get that transformation that you want to see. Play a part in it.
And I want to jump in on this too, because I think that when you talk about how do you actually, what are the actions that really create that transformative change, you also have to find your voice and use your own voice, right? And what I mean by that is that, whether it's, the conversation we were having earlier around the dinner, whether it was, other things, there are lots of people who want to speak for you, who want to tell you what they think the answer is. You guys are out there, you guys are founders, you guys are owners of your own company, so you guys need to speak up about the change that you want to see and what you expect. Taib mentioned earlier that every year when the numbers come out, companies make promises, right? Do they follow through on those promises? Use your voice, encourage them to. There are best practices out there. Sometimes people do well, sometimes they don't do well. And encourage them and keep pushing that, because that is what then creates that change and creates that recognition. If we all sat silent, when Doug put their ad, the ad would still be running, right? And so like, it's because they're, and you know, people have to, you have to raise your hand to be willing to speak. You know, and it's not that I'm sure there are people of color who work in Dove, but they're not empowered. They didn't feel, they didn't use their voice. You have to use your voice to speak up, to be known, and to be heard. So next question.
Yes, I want to thank everybody for participating in the panel. And I'd like to thank you, Liz. I think one of the ways to probably overcome some of this tension that you might feel is to establish a platform where we invite leaders, corporations, and startups, all here to a table, even the politicians, and discuss what the issues are, discuss the food. And that way, you know, everybody can see and talk about the things that you most of them. But, you know, a person like you, who might have those contacts, resources, possibly make it happen. So, you know, we're with you to be inclusive and find out how they work. Okay? So that way, you can establish a platform where everybody can talk about what the problems are, what the solutions are. That's where I see things.
So I think we have time for one more question, and then we're gonna wrap this one up, so.
Hello everyone, I'm Justin Long, I work at Comcast. I've been out of school for 2 years. I'm not from Philadelphia at all. I'm just really talking about Philadelphia's tech ecosystem. Something that I got from this panel the whole time was access, just constantly access. So when I was at the University of Pennsylvania, studying entrepreneurship, and I didn't know how to even access the startup community in Philadelphia. I didn't know that it was thriving as well as it is right now until I was fortunate enough to find a job here after graduating. And also, I was working at a startup, fortunately. But how can you give students, what can we do to let students even know that they have access to the startup community here? If they don't even know that it exists.
So, Web Junto actually hosts I met my co-founder at a meetup. We host meetups regularly, and we try to rotate to co-working spaces and college campuses, and we partner with different entrepreneurial programs, business programs, development, design programs, and we try to get the students more involved because you're right, a lot of students don't know. We get a lot of students to come to our events by offering pizza and snacks and things like that. But I think that's kind of the key is you got to look for, go to your advisors. A big part of it is also you seeking that, right? You're the kind of person that's seeking that information. Not everybody is, right? So that means you have a leg up ahead of other people because you're seeking the knowledge that other people aren't. Not a lot of students are going out and looking for these things. Every time I meet a student at one of these events, at a hackathon, wherever I'm at, I say, go to meetup.com. You will find events that are nearby your campus, on your campus. Go join some student groups. You know, there's a ton of stuff, but not everyone's looking. So, you know, just don't be afraid to ask. And that's the most important thing. Always ask. If you hear something from somebody that you're interested in talking to, go up to them and ask them, hey, how can I get involved? What resources are you aware of? Do you want to have a coffee date? Like you've all said. I mean, I do coffee dates all the time, and all I do is throw out resources to people. So, and intros, yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is just asking.
Yeah, I'll add to that. So this is something I'm really passionate about. I graduated from Temple, knew nothing. I didn't just told you a story. So the first thing I did with Philly Startup Leaders was I created a group called Start to Stay Grow, and what we did with that was have you been involved? It's cool. What we're doing now is we created a student board with 2 students from each campus, who kind of 2 different network nodes. We're trying to kind of make sure we're at least starting with 2 different network nodes per campus that have their eyes and ears on the field, and that hopefully over time will be established as the people you can go to on each campus. Because sometimes when you're a student, you're like, I don't really want to go into Center City to meet with someone who's like 10 years older than me. Like, I'm shy, or I don't know what to ask or whatever. I think what Liz said about you gotta make your own opportunity for yourself, and you should get on the subway. You should get into the city and ask people, get off campus, go into the city. But let's just say not a lot of students are there yet. So we're creating that student board where we're the eyes and is, but also students can come to them when they want to be outward looking. And then also we have student tours that we're doing now that we're going to for a day tour of the startup community where we're stopping at startups that are smaller, some bigger, a co-working space, a larger corporation that has an innovation piece to it. So we're doing that work now to kind of make, don't even ask any questions, just hop on this, subway ride, we'll take you in the city on a walking tour. And making that super affordable, the only thing you have to pay for is lunch. So those kind of programs, we're doing that, and then we have a student summit in the winter that we do for you to come in the city and meet people from different campuses. So if you have any other ideas for kind of programs that students might be interested in, let us know. But we're right now doing a lot of intern matching and then coffee day matching. So if someone's interested, we find someone in the community that they can feel like is doing what they want to do, and then introduce them.
Student engagement.
In like the last 12 years, to Liz and Yuval's point, students have to be engaged. I think the modern university model kind of operates almost like casinos. They don't want you to leave the grounds. So like from the movies to Katoba to like every other event is all within walking distance. That's going to destroy you as an adult. So I think like young people have to get out into the world. And one of my biggest critiques of, say, the West Philly education industrial complex, there's all kinds of people who have, they could be at Wharton, or they may be at the design school at Drexel or Penn, and they have really lofty ideas about how to get 20 people water in southern Sudan, but they don't have one idea for West Philly. If young people could kind of take their talent and resources out into the larger populace of Philadelphia, I think there would be untold rewards that will continually come back to them. So people kind of have to take off their blinders and get out into the world, get off of their campuses.
That's a great point to end on. Liz, Yuval, Taib, I want to thank you guys all. You guys brought the fire here today. If you also brought some real lessons in learning, real conversations about transformative change, real tough conversations about how do you get that access, and some of the different steps that we take to do that. So thank you all for all you're doing. Thank you for joining us, and thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. All right, so next up we have our breakout session with Andre. Where is the love? I think we all need a little bit of love right now. Happening in the breakout room across the hallway, followed by Kevin Williams. Wait, y'all, hold on. I know you're excited. Just give me 1 second. I know you want the love. It's happening across the hall, followed by Kevin Williams doing the sales guide for startups. And we also have mentor office hours happening. Jeffrey Kent, Rudy Ellis, Janice Moore Campbell, Herman Niamanga, James Sanders and Darla Wolf, and Tom Webster are mentoring. Come to the desk to find out when your first appointment is. By the way, Kevin Williams is being subbed out with Tom Webster because his office hours are somehow scheduled at the same time as this session. So it's going to be great.
Whose camera is it? It's hers, so I've been swapping batteries every 15 minutes. So they have extras. So
You want them charging or something?
Say it again?
You want them charging?
Right now. So I'll probably get like 15 minutes out of that. I gotta go do the session like that.
Where is it gonna be at?
Charging right there. I can plug it back home. You got 3 cameras.
I got 8 cameras.
Right, so you can do video. And he's here. So, you just grab the So you taking the other footage right now? You off of this one? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Good. Dude, I was running on the bike right in the middle of that. Can't be doing that. That was pretty much, that was crazy. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, shit came off the whole camera. Yeah, it was on YouTube, but there wasn't a lot of people tuned in, I think, because it was like the 7 days. It was like, I'm just like, I'm glad you were there, because I was just like, like, this is crazy. Every time I got up at switch something here, they were like, yo, are you recording? Are you recording that? Like, I was like, yo, just right in the front, we're good. Like,
I don't know how I came across it.
I was like,
TV.
Here's my joke. I was like
this. Real briefly when I first came, and then
that's crazy.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen your stuff on social media. That's cool. I got a connection with my wife. She makes jewelry.
What's her name?
We say Dawn. But her name was social media.
Woke up in time for your presentation.
Is she like?
It primed them really, really well, actually.
Not much.
Yeah, like
I mean, where we're from,
I'm always nervous, and then something prefaces, and then like, it's like, yo, who's gonna do it? It's already the stage is lit.
Okay.
Yeah. She sells jewelry and like African inspired.
I'll just get pictures and clips and.
Although you better end in 20 minutes, bro. Yeah. Oh, right, so you have to go. So you don't have a memory card that you can leave. Can you leave one?
Yeah, I can leave you.
Okay, because this one's going to be done, so you'll have everything except for this one that's in.
Yeah, I'll get that one for you later.
Okay, fuck. I want to see this one.
I'm almost